The meeting is now live, Councillor Brown. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to planning. Would like to welcome everybody to the meeting this evening, which is being held remotely. We are recording the meeting and the recording will be available on the council website following the meeting. The meeting is being streamed live on the council's YouTube channel and the link is provided on the council's website. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so that the meeting is uninterrupted by ringtones. All participants will be muted at the start of the meeting and will be asked to unmute when they are called to speak. The procedure for this evening will follow the usual. The planning officer will present their report in full. The planning officer will then read out any written statements received from members of the public on a particular item. I will then invite people who have signed up previously to the meeting in order to be able to speak on a particular application. Each person will join the meeting via Zoom and will have 3 minutes to give their views. Once all comments have been given to the meeting, I will then invite members of the committee to discuss the application and to reach a decision. Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we've received apologies from Councillor Kettle.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Councillor Morris.
Okay, yes, I am unmuted. Yes, I've been lobbied on planning application 3 by the developer.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? I have received lobbying from on item 3 and item 4. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've all been lobbied on item 3. I would imagine, but
I would imagine so. I think the emails went to all of us, and therefore I think we should all be declaring that as an interest. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, and the other one is just my association with Full Motor Company. Not that I'm directly involved, but it might matter.
Thank you. And with that, we will go to item agenda 3, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like, for members' benefit, to give a bit of an introduction before passing over the Gardeners Lane South Report, item 3, to presenting officers of Charles Sweeney and Dave Gill. There are 2 items I just want to draw members' attention to as an introduction. The first one is a call-in. Members should be aware that a third party has recently made a request to the Secretary of State to call in this planning application for his determination. We have received correspondence from the Secretary of State regarding this, and they have confirmed that the normal process they follow when considering such requests is to allow the local planning authority to make a determination on the application. And then, subject to this committee being minded to grant permission, we will provide the requested information to the Secretary of State for them to determine if the application should be called in. Only once we have received the decision can we issue the decision notice if the Secretary of State chooses not to call the application in. And the second point I would just like to draw to members' attention, if I may, is Essex County Council's position. It has been confirmed that Essex County Council is not objecting to this application, and both Essex County Council and Basildon Council have worked well together to identify mitigations as set out in the report should the committee consent to the development. However, Essex County Council does still have concerns as set out in detail in their letter of the 21st of April, which is appended to the update sheet which members have. Essex County Council ask that the committee consider their concerns in determining this application. In relation to the section 106, which would accompany any grant of planning permission, Essex County Council and Basildon Council are committed to working jointly to ensure the collection of contributions and delivery of infrastructure in Basildon to meet the needs of our communities. Therefore, in relation to this application, Basildon Council have agreed to work closely with Essex County Council, sharing draft wording of the Section 106 agreement and enabling Essex County Council to agree the final wording for inclusion in the Section 106 in relation to infrastructure to be delivered by the County Council. All of this information is included in the update sheet issued to members. And that's the end of my introduction, Chair. I'm happy to pass over to the presenting officers, Charles Sweeney and Dave Gill.
Yeah, thank you. We could move over to Charles, I believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Next slide, please, Thomas. This application relates to a site located to the west of Gardeners Lane South in Basildon. The A127 South End Arterial Road is located to the north of the site, and Cranes Farm Road is located immediately to the south. This slide shows the site's relationship with the town centre. The purple and blue lines show bus, cycle and walking routes to the town centre. Next slide, please, Thomas. This slide is an aerial image with the application site edged in red and identifies the key roads through the site: Gardeners Close and Gardeners Way, both accessed off Gardeners Lane South. Members will no doubt be familiar with this site, but by way of background, it has been earmarked for development since the 1990s. It was an allocated site in the 1998 local plan and remains an allocated site in the emerging local plan. It is located within the urban area and is the only allocation in the emerging local plan which is not within the Greenbelt. Within the adopted local plan, the site was earmarked for employment, residential and open space purposes. Within the emerging local plan, the site is earmarked for at least 790 new homes, 2.9 hectares of land for a primary school with early years provision, open space and 9.9 hectares of sports pitches and supporting facilities, 10 gypsy and traveller or travelling show people plots and 5.5 hectares of B-class employment space. The applicant has worked to meet the requirements of the emerging local plan allocation, albeit, as members will be aware, these policies have yet to be tested and found sound examination. The overall site area is approximately 28 hectares and historically was within multiple ownerships with a number of different land uses, including small numbers of residential properties, sports and social clubs, sports pitches and a rifle club. Largely because of the fractured land ownership, over a number of years, portions of the site have come forward for piecemeal development, most notably 2 planning applications for residential development totaling 77 homes located towards the eastern edge of the site. In more recent years, Homes England have taken a greater role in land assembly and recently entered into a development agreement with the applicant to help facilitate the comprehensive redevelopment of the site. Could I have the next slide, please, Thomas? This slide shows the application site edged in red, and members will note the red line excludes the Post Office Club, Basildon Rugby Club and existing residential development. The next slide, please, Thomas. The application is a hybrid planning application, which means that it is seeking detailed or full planning permission in respect of part of the site, with outline planning permission being sought for the remainder of the site. The detailed component, parcel 3, located to the south of the site, immediately north of Cranes Farm Road, would provide for 74 new homes with associated road and drainage infrastructure and open space. The outline component for the remainder of the site would provide for up to 626 new homes, 25,000 square metres of commercial floor space, land for a new primary school, a new sporting community hub consisting of new playing pitches, an artificial 3G pitch and clubhouse with associated road and drainage infrastructure and open space. We'll now hand over to Dave Gill to run through the detail of the application. Thank you.
Okay, can we have the next slide? Yeah, this is the proposed master plan. As you can see, it's shows residential development on the southern parts of the site, set out in a kind of linear format, with the widening of the Gardener's Close and Gardener's Way to the north and south of the site, and a new link road linking to the two existing roadways. The southern parts of the site, sorry, are kind of mainly detached and semi-detached properties interspersed with blocks of flats and terraced properties. So the northern part of the site, you'll have the new sporting facility, which will have a new football pitches, together a new pavilion and car parking area. The white area shown on there is the potential school site, and the northern part of the site, the mixed use quarter, will be a combination of employment uses on the ground floor of the 3 southern blocks with flats above, and wholly employment uses on the northern blocks. So if we go to the next slide, this gives you the general mix of houses within the development. The blue, as you can just see, the blue and red properties are the affordable units proposed within the scheme. So overall, there is 694 units set out in a variety of house types, 1 to 4 bed in total. It slightly differs from the emerging plan policy requirements in terms of there is a greater number of 1 and 2 bed units. This is partly as a result of in trying to increase the number of units in the overall site, mainly within the flatted schemes on the mixed quarter. But however, the general mix of units is felt to be acceptable and aligns in general with the emerging policy. In terms of affordable provision, the proposal would be policy compliant with 31% of all the new units proposed, that's 250 units, being of affordable type, either affordable rent or intermediate rent. If we can go to the next slide. This gives the story heights proposed within the scheme. You've got the larger 3 and 4 story buildings on the mixed quarter element on the northern part of the site, adjacent to the commercial units within the Mayflower Retail Park and industrial areas to the east, whilst the lower, more domestic scale properties are found on the southern parts of the site, with the 3 story blocks shown in red on feature corners, or in those shown in the southeast corner there as a kind of feature as you're approaching the development itself. If you go to the next element, this is the as part of the scheme there will be a central green which will be the main feature as you're within the site, available to all residents. It's approximately 1 hectare in area, with the northern part of that being retained woodland, and that will provide a nature area for residents as well as the local wildlife. The southern part would be a more kind of formal area, and would be main as part of the overall scheme. There were maintenance strategy to ensure that it is well kept in the future. Elsewhere within the site, there would be what they call sustainable urban drainage features fronting onto Gardeners Lane South. These will provide the drainage for the whole site itself, but they will be designed to be attractive, well landscaped areas with ecological features to offset any of the loss of trees and meadows within the site itself. Excuse me. it says, in overall terms, the open space provided is slightly below what would normally be required for a site of this scale. However, the applicants are proposing to offset that by providing contributions towards improvements on Whitmore Park and at Holy Cross Recreation Ground, and this would be subject to a Section 106 contribution. In terms of the overall scheme, there would be a loss of a number of mature trees of various categories, but as part of the overall scheme, the developer is proposing around 500 new trees aligning new roadways, the open space, and within the residential estates proposed. In terms of ecological interest, the applicant has provided a ecological impact assessment and a series of mitigation measures to overcome any impact proposed as a result of the scheme, including replacement hedgerow planting, bat and bird boxes within the residential areas themselves, as well as offsetting the loss of some of the trees with new planting in areas to be designated at a later date, and that would form part of a conditional consent. Excuse me. There's also been concern raised by residents regarding impact on badgers. There are a number of sets on the site, and they would need to be closed off, but the proposal would see an artificial badger set provided within the site, and the proposal has been reviewed as part of the overall scheme by the various ecological parties, the consultees that we use, the Essex Badger Group and the Essex Wildlife Trust, and they are satisfied that the proposal mitigation measures put forward are of a reasonable standard. And it should be added that there would also be a licence necessary to carry out any works within a 30-metre radius of the existing badger sets, and that would be again subject of a condition of any approval on site. Finally, in terms of ecology aspects, the site itself falls within the zone of influence of the recreational and activity management strategy, RAMS as it's normally known, and there would be a contribution as part of the proposal sought from the developer. Again, that would be subject to a Section 106 agreement. So if we go to the next slide, Tom. So, as mentioned earlier, the application is a hybrid application with one part a detailed aspect, and this is the area that would be the subject of that part of the application. It involves the new roadways, the improvements to the existing access points onto Gardeners Lane, together with the sustainable drainage features fronting Gardeners Lane, as well as some the hedged areas around the Cranes Farm Road area and Gardeners Close itself, and the new residential development within Parcel 3. If we go to the next slide, this shows you the detailed layout of Parcel 3 itself. As mentioned earlier, it's a very linear form of development, east-west or north-south. Be one access point onto Gardeners onto the widened Gardeners Close, of which would be these new roadways and the properties fronting onto that. The scheme itself would see the building line set closer to Gardeners Close itself to provide a new street scene along that road, and that would be continued into later phases of the development. Let's say that the properties themselves would have adequate garden areas, good separation, and parking would be provided either adjacent to the buildings themselves or set out in dedicated car parking areas, such as adjacent to the flats and the terraced properties themselves. If you go to the next slide, this gives you a general impression of the proposed houses and flats. They're predominantly brickwork with grey cladded areas at the upper levels and darker roof styles. This is a view along Gardener's Close itself. Go to the next slide. This is within the one of the streets within the scheme. Is generally semi-detached properties in this area, with the car parking set to the side of the buildings themselves. Go to the next one. This is further into the site. So there's a variety of house types, about 10 different house types, plus the flats blocks themselves. They've got a few CGIs of the proposed scheme itself coming up. If we go to the next slide. This is as you're coming along Gardener's Close, looking towards the southwest. So you see there's a mix of house types. These have mainly got their car parkings to the rear and facing Gardener's Close, but this shows the widened Gardener's Close, the grass verges, and the newer properties aligning Gardener's Close itself. Go to the next one. This is within the site. This is basically looking west, adjacent to a proposed footpath cycle link. The cycle link would link Gardener's Close to the south with Gardener's Close from to the north with Cranes Farm Road to the south. And this just shows you the link. It's quite a wide, generous cycle path, and within the proposed parcel 3, there will be these areas of open space and retained trees features of those areas. So if we, as part of the proposal, we have consulted 240 residences, and we've received 16 letters of objection. They have raised, amongst others, concerns regarding loss of light, loss of outlook, and issues such as impact of construction traffic, increase of traffic itself along the roadways, and impact on wildlife and loss of trees. We've also had concerns from the Basildon Rugby Club about concerns about their lease, impact of development on the use of their particular site, as well as 36 letters of support from various people, including 4 of the sports clubs, together with a petition containing 92 signatures, and they've highlighted the improvements proposed and the need for affordable housing. In terms of the impact on adjoining residents, particularly in terms of the development on parcel 3, the scheme itself, the scheme itself has been designed to ensure that it doesn't have any direct or significant impact in terms of overlooking loss of privacy. There will be changes when viewed from the adjoining property compared to what they have now, very open site. But the scheme has been designed to ensure that the gardens that back onto the houses that back onto there will have a minimum 15-metre deep garden, well in excess of what we would normally expect on the development of this site. The neighbours have also raised concerns about the provision of a block of flats adjacent to their particular dwelling. However, that has been designed to ensure there's no direct or no windows directly overlooking their property, and would meet the various guidelines that we apply in such situations. Excuse me. In terms of other residential properties joining the site, they again would be a significant distance away, separated by the roadways or a garden provisions. If we go to the next slide. So, as part of the there should be next slide after that. Sorry. As part of the scheme, say the scheme is reliant on either the replacement or relocation of sporting facilities within the area itself. emerging policy H5 highlights this, and as particularly if proposals are to be dealt with in a comprehensive manner. And so this slide shows the various sports clubs and the proposals that are envisaged, and I'll go into a little bit more detail as we go along. So the next slide shows the proposed on-site provision. This will be a new improved facility at the Basildon Sports and Leisure Club. There will be a new pavilion which will incorporate new changing rooms, a new hall, offices and various rooms for both the existing Sporting and Leisure Club and the relocation of the Basildon Football Club to the site. There will be a new improved pitches. The central one there would be for the football club, enable them to use it for their current level of football, step 4 as it's called, and there will be a new artificial 3G pitch next to that with potential for school use, and then there'll be a couple of more smaller training junior sort of pitches. So the intention is that this will be provided with a community use agreement to allow the facility to be used by the general community as well as the various clubs as well. If we go to the next slide, this shows a general artist impression of what the development may well be, with these the new football club area with new stand-in area and covered terraces within it. Go to the next slide. This highlights the proposed relocation of the Rifle Club. Members may recollect an application a couple of years ago for the relocation of the Rifle Club to Courtauld Road. That's the left-hand side with various rifle ranges, and the right-hand side is the future forward relocation site that forms part of local plan allocation policy H8 to the west of Basildon. Sorry about that. The other sporting facilities within the area, the rugby club, are to be retained as they are. Issues relating to the lease are something between the owners and the club itself. The rugby club had raised concerns about the impact on their use of their facilities. The applicants have considered that as part of the scheme, and the environmental health officers have assessed the lighting from the rugby club, together with provision of ball catching areas, will ensure that there would be no detrimental impact on the use of the club itself. Sorry about that. Sporting England have been consulted on these proposals, and discussions have no objections in principle to the proposed layout, subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions and the legal agreement, particularly to do with the community use aspects of the scheme. We go to the next slide. This relates to the mixed-use quarter on the northern part of the site. So this would provide the employment aspects of the scheme, a 25,000 square meters of Class E flexible commercial space. That's the a kind of retail, gymnasiums, business kind of office uses, and that would be mainly on the ground floor of the southern block, with the northern blocks being wholly with employment purposes. As part of that element, there will be 5,000 square meters of ground space. This would be available to business to move into on the short-term leases, and enable them to move on to larger properties at short notice should they wish, and that would again be subject of an agreement as part of any approval. Within the three front blocks would be say new affordable housing, and it's the slide there shows the possible appearance of those buildings. See, Other issues that the residents have raised relate to air quality and the contaminated land issues. These are covered in the report, but the Environmental Health Service are happy that the development will not lead to any detrimental issues in terms of air quality, and that the contaminated land issues can be dealt with by way of condition of any consent. I'll now hand you over to Charles to deal with the remainder of the presentation.
Thanks, Dave. So in terms of the overall Section 106 package, this secures 31% affordable housing, approximately 215 homes, split 50% affordable rent at up to 80% of an open market rent and 50% intermediate housing. The Section 106 will require the developer to submit a marketing strategy prior to occupation, which prioritises sales marketing to those who live and or work in the borough for a period of 2 months. Members will note on the update sheet, we have clarified that the marketing strategy will be required per phase. Section 106 will also secure an agreement that any units will not be sold or rented to other local authorities, apart from Basildon Council or SEMPRA, without the prior written approval of Basildon Council. In terms of education, the Section 106 secures the provision of not less than 1.85 hectares of land and up to 2.1 hectares for a primary school and early years facility. The Section 106 secures a financial contribution of 2.2 million towards early years and primary school places, and a review of secondary school places at 85% of completions or at 2026, whichever is the sooner, to assess child yield of secondary school age. An assessment of secondary school places will also be undertaken, and where a deficit is identified, a financial contribution in line with the relevant Essex Developer Guide to Infrastructure Contributions that is in force at the time will be made. The Section 106 agreement will secure a community use agreement for the new Basildon Sporting and Leisure Club in relation to the multi-use games area to provide the development school or any school that supersedes this access to the facility 5 days a week during term time between 13 hours and 17:30 hours. In terms of open space and sports provision, the Section 106 secures a financial contribution of £205,000 towards improvements to Whitmore Park and Holy Cross Recreation Ground, and a financial contribution of £120,000 towards the local delivery pilot scheme in partnership with Sport England, which is designed to help improve health and wellbeing outcomes for residents. Section 106 secures details of replacement Basildon Sports and Leisure Club and Basildon United Football Club new facility following the principles set out in the application, which ensures that phasing of the development on the Basildon United Football Club site, which is parcel 6, does not take place until replacement facilities have been provided. It also secures details of a draft lease of Basildon Sport and Leisure Club site and the details of the community use agreement for the new Basildon Sporting and Leisure Club facilities. The Section 106 secures the provision of a relocated sports facilities before works are carried out with the specified parcels, i.e. Basildon Rifle and Pistol Club on parcel 4, Ford Sports and Social Clubs, parcels 5, 8 and 9, and secures the provision of parcel 7 open space investment prior to the occupation of parcels 7, 8 and 9. In terms of healthcare, the Section 106 secures a financial contribution of £217,222 to health care facility improvements in the vicinity of the site. In terms of highways and transportation, Section 278 and Section 38 highway agreements will secure highway improvements to Gardeners Lane South, Gardeners Close and Gardeners Way, and the construction of a new loop road within the site, together with a financial contribution of £800,000 towards bus service improvements, including increased frequency and evening Sunday service on the route 94 and 94B, and £627,000 towards the LC Whip route 11, which is a cycle route from central Basildon to Gardeners Way Industrial Estate. Section 106 also secures residential welcome packs for each residential unit. Section 106 secures a commitment by the applicant to work with the council for a period of up to 5 years to find, acquire and build a site suitable for 10 plots for gypsy, traveller and travelling show people. And if this has not been achieved within the required timescales, to make a financial contribution of £1 million in lieu for the council to deliver. The Section 106 secures an employment and skills plan for the development, incorporating but not limited to local employment, supply chain, work experience, careers fairs, site visits, open days, apprenticeships and training offers. The Section 106 secures the provision of up to 5,000 square metres of grow-on space for small and medium-sized enterprises within the proposed employment area, together with agreement and details on unit sizes, management and lease arrangements. And lastly, the Section 106 secures a payment of £88,000 towards the Essex Coastal Rams, together with the payment of the council's legal fees and monitoring fees associated with the legal agreement. Next slide, please, Thomas. Of the Section 106 package, I just wanted to highlight some matters in respect of education and highways to members. So within the update sheet, members will note an updated consultation response from ECC dated the 21st of April 2021, raising concerns over the proposed school site and level of financial contributions. And then a further letter from ECC dated the 29th of April 2021, advising that as the content of their response had been discussed within the committee report, ECC did not object to the development. In terms of the proposed location of the school site, this has been chosen for two main reasons. One, it is an unconstrained part of the site, which means it can come forward when demand from residential occupations requires it. And two, it sits closely to the new sports facilities, which the new school would have access to, together with the sports club car parking area, which could be used for drop-off purposes if families are unable to walk to the new school. In terms of the size of the school site, ECC have requested that the school site is up to 2.1 hectares, but a minimum of 1.85 hectares. The Section 106 will secure this. A land compliance study and education site suitability checklist has also been submitted, and officers will continue to work with colleagues at ECC to ensure they have all necessary information to enable the site to be developed. ECC have also requested a condition is imposed requiring the need for a quality review panel in advance of the submission of any reserved matters application for the school site. This is proposed to be secured via planning condition 10. The next slide, please, Thomas. In terms of education contributions, the response from ECC sought the following financial contributions towards early years, primary and secondary places. And I would just give an update in respect of the early years contribution. ECC have recently confirmed that that should be calculated at the same rate as a primary school place. At the moment, an early years place is approximately £30,000 a place, and the primary school is charged at £20,000 a place. So that early years figure would reduce to approximately 850,000. And therefore the total package would be approximately 5.9 million sought by county for education matters. The Section 106 would secure a financial contribution of 2.2 million towards early years and primary school places, which is below that sought by Essex County Council. This is covered in paragraph 6.5.8 and 6.5.9 of the report, but in summary, in respect of early years places, the response from ECC identifies that in the Friars ward alone, there are 20 nursery providers with a total of 25 unfilled places, with the proposed development anticipated to generate approximately 41 early years places. Whilst capacity of nurseries will fluctuate, unfilled places should be utilised in the first instance before seeking developer contributions for additional places. Therefore, it is not considered that the early years financial contribution could be reasonably requested in full. In terms of the primary school places, available capacity within primary schools is more limited, and the new school on this site will help to deliver additional primary capacity to this area beyond what the proposed development is anticipated to generate. The primary school place financial contribution is considered valid in light of the evidence provided. However, in assessing the overall package, it should be acknowledged that the proposed development over-provides on the amount of land required to meet the need arising from the proposed development. So the proposal generates a need for approximately 0.67 forms of entry, but gifts land sufficient for a 2-form entry school, as the Education Authority do not build 1-form entry schools. It is considered that this over-provision of land needs to be taken into consideration when assessing the level of financial contributions being sought. In addition, the school land would need to be serviced by the developer at an estimated cost of £400,000, which is additional to the financial contribution. Taking these factors into account, a total education contribution of 2.2 million has been negotiated with the applicant for early years and primary school places. It is understood there are also unspent education contributions of approximately £238,000 in respect to phases 1 and 2, which could also be utilised. Therefore, whilst the level of early years and primary school place contributions are below that sought by Essex County Council, the Essex Developer Guide advises that while it is ECC's role to assess the impact of a new development on the services it provides, it is the local planning authority's duty to decide whether or not the level of contribution requested is appropriate. For the above reasons, it is considered that a balanced, justified and evidence-led approach has been adopted in respect of the requests for both financial contributions and land. In terms of secondary school places, members will note the request from ECC for approximately 2.3 million. However, work associated with the emerging local plan identified that there is some capacity within secondary school provision in the Basildon urban area, given an outflow of pupils from Basildon. This, together with evidence submitted from the applicant regarding significant surplus of spaces within 2 local academies, meant that the council did not have sufficient evidence to seek financial contributions from the applicant towards secondary school places. At this point, I just want to refer members back to paragraph 6.5.7 of the committee report, which sets out that the council must ensure that all requests for planning obligations meet certain tests, and these are necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. Therefore, at the time the previous committee report was published, there was insufficient evidence to request this contribution. However, ECC have since provided new information evidence through their latest 10-year plan for school places, dated 2021 to 2030, which demonstrates a forecast deficit of secondary school places in Basildon. Their position is maintained in the recent consultation response dated the 21st of April. This has been reviewed, and it is clear that the latest forecasting now demonstrates that additional secondary school places will start to be required from around 2023 to 2024 onwards, although members should treat forecasting with a degree of caution, as the 2019 and 2028 10-year plan for school places produced by ECC concluded that Basildon required no new secondary school places up to 2028-2029. Therefore, to address this issue, it is recommended that a review of secondary school places is undertaken at 85% of completions or in 2026 to assess child yield of secondary school age. An assessment of secondary school places will also be undertaken, and where a deficit is identified, a financial contribution in line with the relevant Essex Developer Guide to infrastructure contributions will be made. This is considered to address ECC's concerns with regard to secondary school requirements and will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. The Council will work in partnership with the Education Authority and other relevant providers and the Department of Education to ensure that the deficit position for secondary school places is resolved, and that at the point in time when a new school is required, the full funding will be available. Next slide, please, Thomas. In terms of highway contributions, within the update sheet, members will note an updated consultation response from ECC dated 21st of April, which confirms that from a highway and transportation perspective, the impact of the proposal is acceptable to the Highway Authority, subject to a number of conditions, including a financial contribution of £800,000 towards bus service enhancements and a contribution towards the local cycling and walking improvement plan, known as the LC WIP Plus. This scheme is proposed to deliver a financial contribution of £800,000 towards bus improvements, specifically increased frequency and evening and Sunday service on Route 94 and 94B, works in kind to facilitate bus routing through the site, including foundation strengthening, raised crossing points, signage and bus stops. For members' information, the total highway package is estimated at approximately 5.5 million, with measures to facilitate bus routing estimated at approximately 1.1 million or 20% of the highway package. A financial contribution of £627,000 towards the LC WIP Plus Route 11, which is a cycle route, Central Basildon to Gardens Way Industrial Estate, is also offered. So the transport package would total £1.427 million, not including the works in kind. Next slide, please, Thomas. So the final slide just provides a summary of the benefits of the development. Just to recap, it is a site that's been stalled for a number of years, allocated through the existing and emerging local plans, significant investment in sporting infrastructure, 31% affordable housing, 215 homes, land for a school, commercial floor space, new bus route through the site, upgrading of highways, together with financial contributions towards sustainable transport. So the application is recommended to members for approval, subject to the conditions and section 106 as identified in the report. Thank you. Get rid of it.
Thank you. Our officers now will read out the statements received. Thank you.
So for members, I have a number of responses to read out. So the first one is outline of objections. So noise increase due to combination of loss of trees, which provide noise abatement and reverberation of outside industrial noise hitting the proposed flats and internal noise from occupants close by to our living and sleeping space. Large bins and noisy collection vehicles serving the flats, which will be closer to our living and sleeping space than to the properties they serve. Noise exposure category levels identified in planning documents may create a cost impact on our property. Deviation from established building line. Out of character design with poor layout with direct access onto dual carriageways. Relocate the bike path to existing footpath on opposite side of the road, as proposed bike path directly outside our house affects our access and our 10-inch high hedgerow. 10-foot high, sorry. Obscures vision of approaching cyclists, creating a safety issue. The applicant does not own the green verge and ditch south of the road edge, making up the frontage of our property. Application ignores restrictive covenants, setting properties back from road and establishing existing building line. Flats significantly impact on the amount of natural light enjoyed for over 30 years and are protected by prescriptive light rights from overshadowing and loss of light. Violates our human rights and our prescriptive rights. See HR Act Protocol 1, Article 1 and Article 8. See Britain versus SOS case law. Flats are significantly overbearing to our house, whilst giving greater distance to the applicant's proposed houses. Relocate flats elsewhere away from our boundary. Development overlooks the whole of our property, being living spaces and land, causing major loss of privacy by numerous households. Should realign houses to face north and south and frosted glass on any windows facing west, as overlooking our property and Liverpool annex. Misleading maps due to manipulation and photoshopping and should invalidate the application. Traffic, road safety and infrastructure issues. No update on the 11,000 volt main or land ownership issues. Air quality topic paper produced by council does not permit this development. Negative impact on biodiversity with loss of mature trees, wildlife and open spaces. Lack of commitment to site. Requirement indemnity for any future potential claims for nuisance due to the change of use of immediate area to residential development whilst we remain. Loss of amenities protected by policy BAS E1. Ignores the council's 250 metre no build zone and the more recent 400 metre no build zone given in the applicant's planning statement for previous application 16/00830/0 OUT in 2016, which is not referred to in planning history documents. Development is contrary to local and emerging plan and comprehensive development scheme and does not create an inclusive design. Misrepresented statement of community involvement is contrary to policy. Dust from construction works will be ongoing for 2 decades. Reference made to asbestos in done Roman property, contaminated land. And then another response to read out. The recent Town and Country Planning Consultation England Direction 2021 came into force on 21st of April 2021, requiring that local planning authorities in England consult the Secretary of State before granting planning permission for certain types of development. Whilst this applies to planning applications submitted after this date, additionally, the Secretary of State considers planning applications where there are requests to call them in, as in this case. In accordance with the identified reasons in such legislation and the Caborn principles, some of our reasons include Given that the application is a development outside of town and in addition relates to playing field development, albeit owned by Homes and Communities Agency, Sport England, as a statutory consultee, stated that their interim position is to submit a holding objection due to insufficient information, considering that the application in light of MPPF, particularly paragraph 97, and against its own playing fields policy. The application is contrary to the local development plan and comprehensive development area scheme. Contrary to local climate change and air quality topic paper, September 2020, stated that development at this site will not be permitted until the nitrous dioxide levels at the identified points have been brought below the statutory limits for which, to our understanding, they have not. And as life begins to return to normal from when tests may have been performed during the pandemic by the applicant, then their data should be deemed unreliable and unacceptable, thus relying on the council's own topic paper information that is specific to this site. This is of a national importance given air quality limit values are applicable to the whole of the UK. Natural England have identified that this development site falls within the zone of influence of one or more of the European designated sites scoped into the Essex Coast Recreational Disturbance Avoidance and Mitigation Strategy, or known as RAMS, and therefore advise that you should not grant permission until such time as the HRA has been carried out and the conclusions confirmed in line with our guidance. Bias and predetermination that shakes the foundations and integrity of the planning system. We have sought that this planning application be called in before the Secretary of State and ask therefore for the councillors of this committee to support us in seeking that this application be either refused, suspended or deferred to fix and amend the issues that have been identified and raised, but also pending the outcome of whether the Secretary of State will become involved and agree to hear this application. Thank you. And then and that's it. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. I believe that's all the statements we have. Correct, Charles? Is that all of them? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. We will now be able to turn to members of the public who have been waiting to be able to come in. I believe I've got Mrs. Moorcroft first of all. Thank you. Just having a slight technical issue with Mrs. Moorcroft's connection. So if you just bear with us, please. Thank you.
She's in. Miss Moorcroft, are you able to unmute yourself and turn your video on?
Mrs. Randy Moorcroft, you're on to speak to address the committee. Could you unmute yourself, please? Check. Can we let the next person on? I'll send them, Mrs. Moorcroft, an email.
Whilst we're trying to get Mrs. Moorcroft sorted out, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next person, which is Casey Rowe on behalf of the Culpeper Club.
Hello, Miss Rowe. So if you can unmute yourself, that's it. Perfect. You press unmute.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Culpeper Club has been running in Basildon since 1970.
Miss Rowe, so if you can unmute yourself, that's it. Perfect.
Ready? Okay.
You press
You'll need to
unmute.
turn off the video stream, please, or else we'll hear the back echo from it because of the time delay.
Yeah,
Thank
hang
you.
on. Yeah. that okay?
Brilliant, thank you. Do you want to start the 3 minutes again, please? Thank you.
Thank you. The Culpeper Club has been running in Basildon since 1978, providing, supporting and partaking in many community activities, and during the last 30 years has endured the burden and uncertainty on a regular basis. I have myself spent many years trying to bring awareness of the negative impact these planning applications have created, not only on the clubs and residents themselves, but the community as a whole. Although I appreciate the main concern of recommendations in the application by Sport England in protecting outdoor activity areas within these clubs, it mainly leans towards the sports of football and rugby. Recent Sport England findings show that exercise through community venues, church halls and village halls, etc., particularly in the over 65s, has seen that for every £1 invested, a return of £4 was seen. And as a club, we have contributed towards the 4.8 million people who exercise through dance alone every week in England. The Culpeper Club is the only club that has no certain future mentioned within the application, apart from the intention of eradication between now and 2031, with the added inclusion of the possibility of coming forward at any time, which I'm sure you can all appreciate has an enormous impact on the future stability of my business and the continued well-being of the community. At this moment in time, there is no committed agreement that would assure me that resolution will be concluded in the near future. Along with the lack of site assembly for the comprehensive development, it gives little confidence that even if planning is successful, history has proven that there are many obstacles still to overcome. Understanding the need for housing in Basildon, I do respect the decision to develop the Culpeper Club site, but I am appalled that this situation of uncertainty continues and would hope that an approach for resolution is sooner rather than later. It's not only beneficial to me, but also to the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe. We've next got, I believe, have we been able to get back Mrs. Moorcroft? Are you still working on that? Sorry.
Mrs. Moorcroft, no, I haven't.
Okay. We're just going to try see if Miss Moorcroft's able to unmute and therefore be able to come in.
Hello, I'm here.
Excellent, thank you. Are you able to turn your camera on?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Let me for a minute because I've been waiting a while. So, right, okay.
Thank
Hello
you.
all. Do you want me to start, Adele? Yeah. The plans, we know we have to build housing. We have a chronic shortage of housing. We have a lot of people on the waiting list. So whilst in one way I welcome the fact that we are going to be doing something on this side, what I have a great problem about is that we need to keep in the foremost of our mind that we have a climate change problem here. We're in the COP26, where this country is going to be leading the world on saying how are we going to build better, how are we going to be cutting down our renewable energies, or actually increasing them, I'm sorry. What I feel very strongly about is affordable housing. And I think affordable housing cannot be used in this way for Basildon to turn into a dormitory for London. Local houses, local people, local employment. Any sort of building should have a training element in it, and we should be building to the highest standards we possibly can. We have different types of modern methods of construction. We have big companies here who can do it, but I would like to see inclusion driven right through this development. When we do housing, we have to look at who's going to live in those houses. It's now 50 years when the very first houses, first houses were built in Vange for Basildon Development Corporation, and that was in villages. Now we have this once in a lifetime opportunity to turn Basildon into an exciting place to live. But those affordable houses must be affordable. They must be for local people, and they should be at least built to be energy standards. If you build a house that we will reach at 2035 what we have said, we have promised the world. The Prime Minister has promised net carbon. And so to build anything less than sea level, we should be aspiring to A level. We should be building houses that have energy bills of less than £20 a month. And we should be building those houses for people in need, not for sale. So I'm probably coming to the end of what I had to say. It's just, again, to please concentrate on the fact that 2035, we have to do this. I can't hear you, so I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Right, perfect. I might have, I've got 32 seconds. Thank you very much. I'm just going to close again to say, we should be building homes that people want to live in. We don't need to build and cram it all in so that we have the loss of green space, the loss of the biodiversity. Where I'm living now, we have foxes, we have deer coming into the garden, into Gardener's Close. So please, when you build, think about the people, allow smaller developers to come in, allow local people to have a voice. Thank you very much for listening to this.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker on this item is Pauline Misson. Thank you.
Hello, Mrs. Misson. Are you able to unmute and turn your camera on?
Yeah, just
one
testing.
second. No problem.
Is it
Thank
coming
you.
up?
Perfect.
Right.
That all okay?
Yes, if you'd like to start, thank you.
Yeah, just start reading it, Mother.
I'll start reading.
Yeah.
In case you consider to make the argument tonight that you should not refuse this on the ground of the cost of an appeal should you lose, I would like to say that that should be unacceptable. We and statutory consultees have given plenty of substantial and reasonable grounds for this application to be refused. The council rarely cares about costs when refusing the average citizen or small developer. If planning and providing homes is to be achieved, and fairly so, we need the planning system to be challenged, either firmly set or amended. If rules are right and proper, they should apply to one and all and not be applied to discriminately. There should be a clear vision and evidence that all can rely on without the need for expensive planning or legal support. Therefore, if your reasons to grant falls on a fear of cost, you must know there is an issue with your planning policy and this needs testing. You owe a duty to test your own policies and stand by your convictions for the benefit of us all. Personally, I cannot put into words the 30 years of grief and anguish we have suffered, and certainly not in 3 minutes. Our lives have been stolen. We have been hounded and subjected to blight for most of this period. 2 major full planning applications were passed in 1996 and 2006, but S106 was unsigned. And further, a gypsy and traveller site was also passed in 2012, and the S106 was unsigned. Therefore, there is no guarantee that this development will progress past the 3rd phase. The council failed to hold the developer planning conditions previously. As we do not feel there is any accountability, commitment, consideration, or due care or responsibility, we feel, therefore, that this site needs to undergo due and fair process that is truly transparent, in order that we have some justice and certainty to our lives, and to ensure that no other residents have to undergo the horrors that we have had to endure, that has affected our health and well-being for the stress and trauma spanning 30 years. We feel we are and have been caught in a political crossfire between all parties that have been in power at some point. We have been concerned about the bias and predetermination that seems to apply to this application, and the real chance that the developer will reap the profits from this development and may then consider the rest unviable and undeliverable and leave us with the burden and the resultant issues. This is poor planning, which will see the site kept from development, that had seen the site kept from development for 30 years not reach its full potential for both immediate and wider Basildon residents. Phased development, according to the planning portal, is piercing up the development into manageable parts and say that, quote, for example, an annual rate of housing released for large development that may need to be controlled so as to avoid destabilising housing markets and causing low demand.
Colin, sorry, your time is up, please.
After 30 years, and that now set to suffer potentially 20 years of phased development.
I'm sorry, Mr. Missing, your time is up.
Well, nearly finished.
Would you just like to finish that last thought? Thank you.
And drawn out effects from construction for the protection of profits at the risk of residents of improper infrastructure and amenities. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We next have Jolie Missing. Is she coming?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Hiya.
Again, you have 3 minutes. You'll be able to see the clock from my colleague, from the officer there. Are you able to see the clock? Thank you. If you'd like to start. Thank you very much.
My understanding is that to grant a hybrid application, you must agree to both parts of this application. As if you'd ordinarily refuse either part when taking on its own merits, I trust you must refuse the whole. I understand, therefore, I ask you, therefore, not to be blindsided and dazzled by the golden promises of the outline application, which by its very nature will most likely be subject to much variation or not transpire. Statutory consultees submitted holding objections due to insufficient information presented in the application and indicate there is a concern that the whole scheme may not be deliverable or viable. I am somewhat confused by the applicant's statement that a habitat regulation assessment, HRA, has been undertaken, SES, in 2020 to determine the required mitigation, when on the 12th of January 2021, after this date, Natural England said the application should be refused until the habitats regulation assessment is carried out and the conclusions are confirmed in line with guidance. Natural England further affirmed the duty of the council to consider biodiversity, including restoration and enhancement. Sports England confirmed a holding objection, as did Essex County Council, who had concerns for infrastructure, flood risk and education matters. Indeed, in the EC's comments, they said at paragraph 1.4 of the education statement suggests that the provision of land for a new primary school and the affordable housing and commercial land would render development unviable and undeliverable. And relating to the Gardeners Close road widening, Mark Lawrence, the strategic development engineer, on the 22nd of April 2020, said that further assessment has also identified the existence of considerable utility provision in the vicinity of the site, including an 11,000 volt electric main, which would render any scheme unviable, albeit I understand that Essex County Council have now changed their position and do not object. Regarding the detailed plan, flats severely impact adjoining existing property and amenities. And with regard to the wider public, I have a major concern regarding the proposed direct access from a housing estate onto a busy dual carriageway serving the industrial areas. Large heavy goods vehicles, general traffic, the nearby motorbike training school with the learner bike riders, as well as the boy races at night, which frequent this dual carriageway. I cannot find evidence in the documents as to what's in place to protect the road users and people alike from the human and vehicle collisions that might occur. As it is obvious to me, the green space on the other side of the road will draw huge numbers of residents to cross the road along various points, and is a serious road safety issue at all times of day and night. The detailed planning application has no affordable housing, and it does not appear the Gardeners Close will be widened for this phase, but just the junction which should have been carried out and part of the road widening with the previous development. Please do not focus on potentially empty promises, but the detailed plan with its poor design, limited infrastructure, and no affordable housing. Do not allow the developer to potentially skim off the cream off of this site and potentially leave the residents with the issues, including insufficient infrastructure and the taxpayer with the potential cost, whilst also making the site undeliverable and unviable to develop to its full potential. Therefore, please support us and the statutory consultees of Natural England, Essex County Council's previous stance, and Sport England's I've just got one sentence, by refusing this application, such that we do not continue to suffer the uncertainty on top of added issues from a lack of foresight, and instead support full planning for this site in the future. Alternatively, suspend or defer this application so it can go before the Secretary of State and face due and proper process and consideration in full. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe now we've got Daniel missing. Thank you. Hi, good evening. And again, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Recently, we have sent a lot of documents to all members, as well as contacting Secretary of State. That's the repercussions of false pretenses and misrepresentations. It's sad that the planning process has been weaponized for a political war, that this application is being rushed when it should be suspended or invalidated or even deferred. The head of planning has misrepresented the agenda which we raised, failed to represent all planning history, including the 400-metre no-build zone. Head of planning has failed to amend the misrepresentations as this may highlight that is what was done. She misrepresented the Essex Badger Protection Group, strongly stating the application should be refused. The proposed green is unacceptable for existing wildlife. We have highlighted an internal email from Homes England highlighting predetermination. I have produced a very detailed document of maps that have been photoshopped, which head of planning misrepresents as being a simple error. The Photoshop map is used multiple times for multiple purposes throughout the documents. Even the council has shown these maps tonight, all photoshopped. Head of planning has relied on a Photoshop map to make claims of screening our property from the flats. Head of planning has failed to accurately represent our objections. Statement of community involvement fails to represent our comments. Our face-to-face meeting during the pandemic, thus violating the local planning policy that relied upon being 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. For your information, there is no unilateral notice on the land at Courtauld Road, therefore no real commitment to relocate the rifle range. This was checked with the land registry last night. We have highlighted how our amenity is affected, sent photos, and I want to leave you on a quote. What is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, then we will no longer recognise the truth at all. This application should be refused. Otherwise, developers will all be submitting photoshopped maps tomorrow. That's it.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is David Hare. Thank you.
Okay, is that Mr. Hare? Can we just check your audio is working? Yeah, we can't hear you, unfortunately, Mr. Hare. You're unmuted. Would it perhaps be worthwhile you going out and coming back in again, and then we can let the next person go, and then hopefully you'll have audio.
Okay, I think I'm there.
Oh, no, we can hear you now. Yeah, we can't hear you, unfortunately, Mr. Hare. Would you be able to turn your YouTube off?
All right, okay. Get that out of the way.
Thank you.
Okay, we are currently outside the development area of this plan, and our objections have been about securing our tenure into the future. You can't hear my audio?
No, we can hear you. Could you turn off your YouTube, please?
Okay.
And can you please start the 3 minutes again, please? Thank you. I think it's important that it gets a full 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, so Am I on or not?
You're on.
Right, good.
Sarah, can you turn off the YouTube, please?
It's on another device per your recommendation, and I'm hopeless at it. So hang on a second.
Yeah, but you need to turn it off because it feeds back.
Okay. Is that better? Can you hear it now?
Yes, we can. You've got 3 minutes to address the committee, and the timer is on. Thank you.
Thank you. So our objections have been based around our security of tenure. Today we had contact from Inland Homes who are promising to resolve our lease and or ownership of the land. So we are not objecting on the basis that this agreement is fulfilled. We understand lots of the issues from residents. We also understand the need for new roads and houses. What we hope to do is to be part of the future and to work with both the local authority and the developers and anybody else we need to continue our existence and hopefully see this go into the future properly with a successful rugby club and with all of our associated members involved. Just for information, there are 250 youth members and around 500 family members associated with that, with the rugby club. Thank you. We have no further objections.
Thank you very much. Our next person speaking is Peter King on behalf of Basildon Sports and Leisure Club. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. King. Are you able to unmute yourself, please? Do you have video as well, Mr. King?
I'm just trying to, hello?
No problem. Would you be able to switch off your YouTube as well?
Yeah, it's off.
Please. Thank you.
Mr. King.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, evening.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to address the committee and your time starts now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear Chair and members of the Planning Committee, thank you for allowing me to say a few words in support of this planning application. Firstly, may I emphatically state that Basildon Sport and Leisure Club wholeheartedly support these proposals. The site with which I've been associated since 2004, the chairman from 13, and more recently the managing trustee since March 2020, is home to 9 football clubs supporting 18 teams. It is the home site for Basildon Town FC, the oldest football team in Basildon, and more recently was the home of my latest team, C&K Basildon Ladies, who 5 years ago reached the Women's Premier League. We support all sport in the community, and currently our premises are used by a renowned karate club, as well as several children's football and exercise clubs. Additionally, we support the arts, with children's groups performing modern dance, ballet and tap, as well as a local children's theatre school. Classes for maths for vulnerable children and phonics classes for young children with speech problems, as well as holiday classes and camps supporting sport and exercise for all ages of young adults. We are proudly not-for-profit and a registered charity. We have been working closely with Inland Homes and Homes England for the past few years to deliver an exciting new sport and leisure hub in the Gardeners Park area. Our current facilities are very dated and indeed always in need of maintenance and repair, the costs of which eat away at our trading surplus, thus reducing funds to be reinvested. The current building is very inefficient and expensive to run and is really not fit for current purposes. For instance, with 3 full-size football pitches, we only have 2 purpose-built changing rooms, with further 4 having to be housed in depleted porta cabins. This application is incredibly important to us and the whole community of Basildon, primarily as the proposal secures significant private investment in delivering an exciting new facility for us all and ultimately securing the long-term future of the club together with other teams and other users. We have worked positively with Inland Homes in the design process for the new pavilion building, the stadium pitch, 3G pitch and training youth pitches, and are incredibly proud of the work that has been achieved with the tremendous support of Inland Homes and all their associates. The design for us is perfect, and I can confirm that Sport England fully support this development. We contractually indicated commitment to ensuring that all facilities, including the 3G and other pitches, will be fully open to the community as a whole, and we're working closely with sporting neighbours to support them any way we can. We've also committed to fully support the new primary school for sport exercise as well as drop-off and pick-up facilities. The proposal is an amazing sporting offer for Basildon Borough as a whole, a true community scheme and one that will be geared to delivering support at affordable prices. Many thanks for your kind attention, and I do urge your full support for this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. My next speaker will be Richard Clark. Thank you. Mr. Clark, you'll now have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to support the scheme at Gardens Lane South. Basildon Rifle and Pistol Club fully support these proposals on what is a fantastic contribution to sport and the whole community of Basildon. The Basildon Rifle and Pistol Club, of which I am treasurer, have been based at Gardens Close for 50 years. We have over 200 members, many of whom are Basildon residents. We are currently based in what are very tired facilities at Gardens Close, which simply do not allow us to develop our club as we want to grow. We've been working positively with Inland Homes and Homes England for a number of years and have since designed a fantastic facility, now with planning permission at Coulthard Road. Our members, who are predominantly all residents of Basildon, are urging you to approve these proposals to allow our club to stay within Basildon and to benefit from this new investment. This application is incredibly important to us as it will allow the applicants to fund and start building the new facility for us and to help us transition to this new facility at Coulthard Road. These plans have been in the making now for over 30 years, and now we have the responsibility and an opportunity to make this happen. Sports England fully support these plans and will ensure that our club benefits greatly with a new facility to the tune of £4 million paid for by the applicants. These comprehensive proposals represent an amazing sporting offer for Basildon. The applicants have been great to work with and will safeguard the future of our club in perpetuity. Thank you for listening to me this evening, and I respectfully ask that you support your professional officers' recommendations and approve this application.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Michael Manali. Thank you. Thank you. You now have, could you unmute yourself, please? Mr. McNally, if you'd like to unmute yourself, please. Thank you. You'll now have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Committee. My name is my name is Michael McNally. I represent the Ford Sports and Social Club. The club wholeheartedly support this application and everything that it delivers to the benefits of the community of Basildon. In my role as manager at the Ford Sports and Social Club, we are home to 21 football teams, 3 cricket teams and other sports clubs representing circa 600 children and adults who use our premises regularly. We as a club are run as a non-profit, and whatever we have is put back into the running of the facilities. We've been working in a positive collaboration with Inland Homes and Homes England for over 5 years, excuse me, to deliver top quality new replacement facilities for the Ford Sports and Social Club. Our current facilities are simply crumbling away. The constant repair and maintenance work required effectively mean that we are running at losses every year, and we have been for the last 10 years. What we have at Gardeners Close today is nowhere near adequate to promote inclusive sport for the community. Our pitches waterlog all throughout the winter months, meaning that the playing time is very limited. Players and members are frustrated, and the buildings, as I said, are completely breaking down. This planning application is incredibly important to us all at Ford Sports and Social Club and the community of Basildon at large, as the proposals secure significant private investment to delivering us exciting new facilities for all to enjoy and prosper from. We have agreed a specification with Inland Homes and Homes England, and in short summary, our replacement facilities will include a brand new 3G floodlit pitch, a new pavilion building with clubhouse and changing facilities, new freshly seeded playing pitches designed with modern drainage, a new cricket pitch, a brand new extended lease, all built and paid for by the project managed by the applicants on our behalf. We have worked side by side with Inlands in the design process and are overjoyed what we will be receiving. The proposals ensure that the replacement facilities will be built and operational before developing on the Ford pitches at Gardeners Close, turnkey operation. All of this has the full backing of Sport England and the Council's Leisure Parks team. The new 3G pitch, grass pitches, and all the facilities will be open to community use, as is our current standard. Again, excuse me. And we will be working closely with all our fellow stakeholders to ensure we continue to invest in improving the lives of children and adults by promoting exercise and healthy living. In summary, Chair, the submitted proposals secure the future of our sporting facilities and offer to the community of the Basildon the widest sporting news. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of Ford Social Club, and I now ask you to support your professional officers and approve this fantastic scheme to the benefit of all your
Mr. McNally, your time is up, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. I finally have the planning agent, Mr. Corcoran. Thank you.
Hi. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah. Thank you. You're going to have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair. Members of the Planning Committee, thank you for this opportunity to address you all this evening. My name is Matthew Corcoran of CDS Planning, the agent representing the applicants Homes England and Inland Homes. We are delighted to bring forward these exciting proposals that will unlock an incredible package of public benefits and social value for your constituents. The applicants have been working positively for over 2 years with your professional officers, Essex County Council and community stakeholders in preparing a viable and deliverable master plan on what is a 30-year-old stalled allocated site. The plans deliver a further 700 new homes, of which 31% will be on-site affordable housing, all within the urban area. We have just heard from fellow speakers, Ford and the existing sports clubs, just how incredibly important these proposals are to addressing declining facilities. The application has the full support of Sport England, bringing forward significant private investment into delivering high-quality sporting facilities for the community of Basildon. They will be fully open for community use and will continue to support children and adults leading healthier lifestyles, improving their physical and mental well-being. The proposals deliver a new primary school, master planned in accordance with Department for Education standards, benefiting from access to adjoining sports pitches, parking facilities and open spaces. The scheme will see delivery of infrastructure improvements first, whereby before any new homes are occupied, Gardeners Close will be widened, sustainable drainage installed and associated open spaces provided. Essex County Council, including the Highways Department, support this proposal. The application includes significant sustainable transport improvements, as well as, excuse me, as well as improving pedestrian and cycling connectivity on and around the site. Extensive collaboration has taken place with Essex County ecologists, Natural England, the Essex Wildlife Trust, who all support the application. The plans respect and enhance wildlife and biodiversity. We'll see over 500 new trees being planted, fully accessible for the whole community to enjoy. Incorporated within the master plan is 25,000 square metres of deliverable employment floor space, grow-on space to support Basildon's thriving business community and budding entrepreneurs now and in the future. The applicants are committed to Basildon's first charter and will link directly with local education providers, supporting apprenticeships, providing training and job opportunities, hand in hand with the council's employment and skills team. Chair, members of this committee, in conclusion, these proposals will unlock a significant array of public benefit for the community of Basildon and will enrich lives for future generations. This application is truly a sustainable development. It supports council policies and will see this challenging stalled allocated site finally delivered. Thank you for listening to me, and I would urge you all to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any further speakers on item agenda 3. No. I don't have any other speakers from the public. I'll therefore come to our councillors and see if anybody wishes to speak on this item. And Councillor Morris, your hand went up first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Of the public speakers, most were in favour of the application. The most vociferous anti representation was family missing. I'm a little puzzled by their representation because the main thrust seemed to be the fact that for 30 years they have been in limbo awaiting a development of this site. So now that one's come forwards, one would have thought they'd have been only too delighted for their for the situation to be secured, for it to be finished. But instead, they're trying to tell us that we should vote against it and extend the period of uncertainty for them, which I find a little bit odd. Having said that, I'll move on. I'd like to say that whilst it's unfortunate that the full request for education funding hasn't been met by the applicant, there are substantial contributions being made for all sorts of things, not least for highways, affordable housing, open space and sports provision, as we've heard from various other representations, healthcare and bus routes. Also, it generally complies with all our planning policies. So I shall be in favour of the representation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next hand I had going up was Councillor Turner, and then I've got Councillor Rimmer. I'm aware there's other councillors as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've got a number of points of clarification I'd like answered. So, Chairman, can you not mute me so we can actually get a dialogue? Because it is really unhelpful when you mute me and I have to unmute and backwards and forwards. So let me start. Let's come to the social housing element. I just want absolute clarification. There's not a single council house in this development, is there?
Is that going to unmute? It goes unmute, yeah. You asked.
Yep. So, Councillor Turner, yes. So there's 31% affordable housing.
Hold on, Charles. Just answer me. Is there a single council house that is going to help the waiting list?
Yes.
Where?
Well, the applicants in discussions with affordable housing providers at the moment, including Sempra, to take the 31% affordable housing.
But 31% is made up of 50% market rent.
Affordable rent and intermediate products, yeah. So 50% affordable rent, 50% intermediate, yes.
Right, so the intermediate is shared ownership.
Potentially, yeah, it could be, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And the affordable element, the 50% affordable element, it's not council housing, is it? It's market rent, 80% of market rent.
It's up to 80% of the market rent, which is the MPPF definition for affordable housing, yes.
So we're not actually going to get anything that is going to take anybody off the waiting list.
We can't answer that question. Councillor, we can't answer that question. As far as we can deliver as a local authority, and is the fact that it has to meet the requirements of MPPF. Now, if the provider then decides to offer a different set of circumstances when the house is taken over, that's up to the provider. But the scheme itself is set out as we showed you on the presentation and are set out in the report.
The report says 80% market rent.
Yeah, up to 80%, yeah.
Right, okay. So why did we defer? The baseline in the report is 70% affordable and 30% what you call intermediate, shared ownership. Why didn't we just stick to that? That is a policy of the council, albeit emerging. Why didn't we just go after that? What were the reasons for deferring 50-50 rather than 70-30? That doesn't seem logical to me.
That was in discussions with the developer about how the development was going to come forward.
Yeah, but you had a policy there that members had put forward as the way forward. Yeah, that's a member-led policy. Yet in your discussions, you've decided that that's not good enough and 50-50 is okay. Why did you do that?
That's position we've got to with regard to the development, and in terms of the, I mean, as Councillor Morris said, there's a substantial amount of other contributions for other development coming forward on this site.
I'm not talking about the contributions. I'm just saying, David Gill, when he opened, said it conforms to all our policies. It doesn't, and that's the first one that it doesn't. And we could have had that discussion again. When this is going through that planning process, you're in charge of disposing and dispensing and making sure that our policies are adhered to. And that one is a crucial one for the residents of Basildon. Yet we seem to be blowing past it. Coach and horses through that. 70% affordable, 30% intermediate, and we haven't got either.
Councillor,
and again, I would be I'm very, very suspicious of any council housing being allocated to this proposal. You know, just making a point here, that is a policy we didn't adhere to. David Gill said all policies are met. That one isn't. And I don't understand why it isn't. So let me move on. Parking, can I just clarify the ECC EPOA standards for 1 and 2 bed flats on this development? What is that? Is that one space for each 1 bed and 2 bed?
Dave, do you want to answer that one? Can you mute yourself, Dave?
Yeah, that's it. Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. The scheme itself, yeah, for flats, 1 bed flats is 1 space per unit and 2 for 2 bed units.
And
so that's for every flat on this, yeah? Okay, thank you.
Pardon?
And visitor parking as well?
Yeah, visitor parking.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. In the clause that we've got there for not being sold to other authorities, the last statement on that says without written permission from Basildon Council. Surely there wouldn't be any circumstances where we would say to Newham or Hackney, yeah, okay, you can take 30 dwellings. So why do we need that clause in there?
Councillor Turner, this was requested because it's about actually other companies coming in and dealing with the affordable housing. So we want to protect that affordable housing in terms of who delivers the providers to Sempra Homes or ourselves. So in fact, we don't get another company moving in and dealing with those properties. So it's a way of retaining those properties for under our control. That's when the clause has been put in there. And
So
again,
why not just rule it out altogether?
Well, we have to put that in as a clause.
Yeah, so put the clause in there, but just leave out the bit that says without written permission from Basildon Council.
Well, the point is that if Sempra Homes changes or we get a secondary subsidiary to it, we need to be able to deal with that matter through that process, or we become a larger authority and there's another company set up as part of that larger authority. So the Acela Group sets up its own, or whatever that looks like. So it's about keeping the control in under our control, rather than letting anybody else come in and take that affordable housing for their operation and their management.
But under those clauses, under those circumstances you just mentioned, you would never do it, would you? You've already said that Sempra can do it, but you're not saying anybody else can do it.
At the moment, no, that's right.
So it's superfluous. I mean, okay, listen.
Councillor Turner, what I can do is that we can take these are heads of terms. These are not the final obligation. I can talk through it's not. These are just the heads of terms. We can take that part out of the heads of terms. They're not the final obligation, as you're aware. The obligation wording will be completely different to this. So we can take that wording out and then discuss the final wording of the obligation with the Chair of Planning to make sure that if there's a different way of wording it, we can word it that way.
Well, I think we should, because to me that just looks like leaving the door open to London boroughs.
Yeah. Okay.
So on education, I mean, the big question there is why are we so adamant not to give Essex County Council what they've asked for? Why compromise?
I think the point, the position with regard to education, I think Charles went to some extent to explain to you how we'd reached the position we'd got to. And as I think, as Councillor Morris said, the scheme provides an awful lot of infrastructure. We have looked at what Essex County Council required in terms of education, and as part of the infrastructure package, it has to meet those tests. And Charles went through the test for infrastructure for requirements. We've made an assessment of what county have come forward with, and it's up to us to decide whether they meet those tests. And I think Charles went through that quite a lot of detail for you in the presentation. And I think that sets out our position with why we sought those education contributions. And I don't see why we need to go through that again here, because that was very well explained. I mean, we can show that we can get the slide up again if you want to look at the slide, but I think we went over that, I think, to quite a lot to give you all the information you needed.
But it just seems to me that Essex are the authority. They come and say, this is what we need. And Basildon says, no, we know better than you, and you're not getting it.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what Charles said, but I mean, take secondary school, taking the point of secondary school, it's the secondary school position. The forecasting shows that isn't actually required until later in our plan period, and secondly in this development's life cycle, and therefore to ask for a sum of money at the moment where we don't actually know the true levels of that by the point we get to where it actually required in the forecast that is set out for you in paragraph 6.5.10 of the report, where we don't start to see a deficit for the whole of Basildon, not just this development site, until, I mean, this serious numbers don't actually happen until 2028, and we're not looking for a new provision of a secondary school until 2031. So what we have to make sure is that Essex County Council, or whoever is the education authority by that point, has got enough capacity from all our sites to deliver a secondary school in East Basildon by 2031. And that should be what we should be looking for as a local planning authority, is to meet that target. And what we have to deliver will be a proportion of the cost of that school to meet the needs of Essex County Council, to ensure that our residents have the correct access to education at the correct levels and of the correct type for their children in the future. And that is what we've done in terms of our assessment of education, and the way we've looked at that alongside the developer and also the Education Authority in coming up with what we've got to. And the site is over delivering a school site in terms of what the school requires in terms of its 0.67 of a form of entry. That's all the site requires. And the site has already delivered nearly £300,000 of education contributions as part of the Education Authority for expansions of school through phases 1 and 2. And that is currently unspent.
Still coming up short on education. That's the bottom line. And the thing is, we try and mitigate it by these fine words where we say it's deferred and it's this, then it's that. But at the end of the day, there's legacy issues here. And as has already been mentioned, we've seen 106s come and go. They never get implemented. And before you know it, the developer's built the scheme, gone off with his profit, and we're left holding a baby. And this is what happens over and over again. And we can talk about the fact that, you know, we'll mitigate it in this way and another. But at the end of the day, it's much easier just to say Essex are asking for 6 million. You know, we're going to give them 6 million and let them go and do for Basildon what we all want them to do. And that's the bottom line. I'm not here for the developer. I'm here for Basildon residents. But we seem to be turning that round. The tables are turned, and the developer, I won't say getting away with it, but can be very happy where they walk away with potentially 4 million in their pocket. And yes, the scheme does provide an awful lot of other stuff, but it's not providing on education. Let's move on. What about, why aren't we developing Gypsy and Travellers on site? Why do we have to go and look for another suitable site elsewhere in the borough? I don't understand that. When this site has been there for so long, why aren't we just incorporating it into the development?
In terms of the Gypsy and Travel provision, the site has a number of restrictions on the land where Gypsy and Travellers pitches can be placed. And in terms of reaching the numbers that are set out in the emerging local plan and the numbers that we need to reach our housing targets, we could not get the full requirements of the policy plus the Gypsy and Traveller pitches on this site. And therefore, to protect the local plan and to ensure that we can deliver those, we've gone down the affordable housing route of looking at the point where if it can't be delivered on site, the first port of call is a developer has to look at a substitute site. If the developer can't find that substitute site, then he asks the local authority to find that substitute site and then agrees to pay for that substitute site. And that is the approach we've taken, very much in line with affordable housing and commuted sums. So the Gypsy Traveller pitch cannot be delivered on site because of constraints and also because of the high housing numbers that we're seeking from this site. And therefore, we've sought a way of delivering it that sits in line with our normal affordable housing commuted sum position.
Let's come to the number of houses then. My recollection was this site in the local plan was the whole boundary of that Gardeners Lane South development. Is that true?
The policy H5 encompasses all the land, so all the land is still available to come forward as part of the development.
Yeah. So on that H5, that whole land was going to generate 790, nearly 800 homes. Here we are giving 700 homes to a much smaller piece of land. So the densities are that much higher. We've already developed, I think it's something like 70, 100 homes on the first phase that's already there in situ. Yet on this much, much smaller parcel of land now, because you've taken out 3 pieces of land, we're developing 790. And on top of that, not only are we up in the densities, again, we're drifting away from our policies on the mix of housing. This is another policy of Basildon where coaching horses through it and we've walked away. It doesn't conform. The 1 and 2 beds account for 60%. 3 and 4 beds, I mean, laughably, the 4 beds, there's 3% there. So effectively, you've got 60% 1 and 2, or just over, and then 37% 3 beds. What, you know, why do we do that? Why have we got a development that is completely perverse in its mix of accommodation? Why didn't we just stick to the plan again, that members have sort of voted through. And this is the point, you've got 42 members that have agreed a policy, and the planning department has said, no, it doesn't matter. You know, what is the point of these policies if we're not going to go down the route of adhering to them? 1 and 2 beds just means to me that we're going to have all the social problems that we want to get away from.
What's the housing mix? I mean the so in terms of the housing mix is meets generally our policies on housing mix in the emerging plan, and it meets the housing type that fits this area, this site. In terms of the housing numbers, the policy actually says at least 790 homes. So it actually looks at that as an at least number. So we'd expect the site to deliver in excess of that to ensure that we hit our housing targets. Also, there is the restrictions from the site in terms of the rugby club and the other uses that we would have to look at whether they stayed on the site or whether they needed to be relocated. So it's not a case of easy saying that the red line of the allocation is the red line where we'd have had to look at the future development. The development was quite stymied by the by this all coming forward. So I don't think it's as easy as saying that we haven't complied with the policies. And in terms of the housing mix depends on the area that you're looking at. And an area like this, we'd expect, because it sits quite close to our residential areas, we'd sit a general housing mix of looking at 3-bedroom homes to match what is in that area, plus a level of 2- and 1-bedroom units to make up a blend and mix of type and tenure that you'd expect on these developments to come forward in a more modern type, rather than just having one typology and one type of a 3-bed semi-detached house or a 4-bed detached unit. So I think it doesn't mirror the policy, but the policy is there to be defined across a number of housing areas and housing types. So therefore, we addressed the housing types that were coming through from the master plan that the developers put forward, and based on that, we considered that it to be an acceptable mix of housing types. So therefore, we don't consider there's an issue with that. It might not meet the mix that's set out in that policy, but that policy has to be read in connection with the other policies in the plan. So you don't just pick on one policy and say it's not policy compliant. You look at the whole raft of policies that talk about. I'm
not cherry picking, but I think if you do exactly that, if you look at all of the policies, this falls, and it falls because the mix is skewed 1 and 2 bedrooms. I appreciate that when you get a site, you will want to have a mix that represents where that site is and all sorts of matters that you're talking about, policies that are affecting that one site. But you cannot give one site 60% 1 and 2 bedroom and say it complies. It's just perverse. It really is. The 1 and 2 bedrooms, I mean, even if you left out 4 bedrooms and you had a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bedrooms, 60% is just overkill. And again, we'll have all the social problems that we've been trying to get away from for years. And that was the reason that the policy was as it was, so that we could get a different mix of tenure to get away from all the issues. And here we are, cramming all those issues back in a small development on Gardeners Lane South. And it will come back to bite us. It definitely will.
But also, Councillor Turner, if you read on, obviously you've been reading our policies to do with affordable housing. If you read on and look at the affordable housing policies, it does say that the current type and size of accommodation required for affordable housing is in fact 1 and 2 bedroom units, and they should make up 39 and 53% of the delivery. And therefore, what we're delivering in terms of affordable housing is actually meets that requirements. So the levels of affordable housing actually are 1 and 2 bedrooms, which does then skew the position. Because we are policy compliant in terms of affordable housing, it will technically then skew our requirements in terms of that mix of housing types and room sizes and bedroom sizes you get in these houses. So I think it's not just a case of cherry picking one part of 8 to 25. You have to read 8 to 25 as a whole to get that position with regards to your to your bedroom sizes and your numbers. And in fact, it's only the preamble to the policy. What H25 does actually say, it doesn't actually define them as such. It just goes into some general context. So the type and tenure and the size of accommodation doesn't actually form part of the policy. It sits outside the policy. So therefore, policy H25 has been adhered to in terms of what the application is seeking to deliver. What's not part of that policy is in fact the detail that you've actually spoken about. So we do actually comply with H25. What we don't comply with is the preamble to that policy, which goes into the detail that you've actually spoken about.
Well, I'm looking at page 23, and you say in your report, H25 seeks major developments to comprise of a housing mix of 40% one and two bedroom homes, 40% 3-bedroom homes, and 20% 4-bedroom.
What the policy seeks to deliver, that's what it seeks to deliver. But what also it seeks to deliver is that mix of affordable housing as well, which goes into that further detail in terms of the actual mix that's required for affordable housing.
Well, I don't accept that, because otherwise, and this is why we go down this route of, if that is the way it's defined, all we're going to develop is affordable housing. That's all we're going to get. And that's not what this is saying. This is saying we're going to do sustainable developments, we're going to do a mix of tenure, and we're going to overlay on that mix of tenure the affordable housing element. And that's the way it should be, not vice versa. We shouldn't be cramming affordable housing into every major development and then say, oh, because we've got the affordable housing, we can only have 1 and 2 bedroom homes.
No, what we have to deliver in terms of affordable housing is what the affordable housing requirements are. And in our borough, the affordable housing requirements are 1 and 2 bedroom flats. That's what the affordable housing requirements are, not 3 and 4 bedroom flat houses. Sorry, they're not just, sorry, let me get this right. They're 1 and 2 bedroom flats and 2 bedroom houses are required, not just all flats. And therefore our delivery modes is around delivering what is needed at the moment in terms of affordable housing, which will actually skew the percentage of properties that come forward of that type, because we're seeking to deliver high levels of affordable housing. And that's one of the arguments with regards to this site, because it's delivering a high level of affordable housing, you'll end up with a skew. And end it with a skew that may actually then temper the requirements set out in some of the policies that we have to then read in against the council's SHMA and also our own housing corporate needs in terms of that affordable housing. So it's not just about the compliance with our council policies, it's what our SHMA says, and also then against what our general corporate policy is about affordable housing and the proportion of that comes in at 1 and 2 bedrooms. Because it's no point us delivering 3-bedroom affordable housing when they're not going to be occupied, or 4-bedroom when they're not going to be occupied.
I'm not arguing that, and the SHMA doesn't say that. The SHMA says that up to 30% affordable housing. And this is my point. Again, you've spoken about going down the affordable housing route. And yeah, why would you build 4-bedroom houses if nobody wants to live there? I understand that. But what we've done, again, is we've come in on the affordable housing element and said, that's all we need. Right now, that's all we need, 1 and 2 bedroom homes. But that's today. And that need will change. We know it does. A few years ago, it wasn't 1 and 2 bedroom. It was 3 bedrooms. Now it's swung back. So there's no guarantee that by the time these are built, it won't have gone somewhere different. Who knows? I mean, with the mix of families that we're getting in, it may be 4 bedrooms. My point is this: if you chase the trends, you'll end up with unsustainable development. And that, I think, is what we've done here. We've gone down and said, right now, we only need 1 and 2 bedroom homes. I mean, I'm surprised there's any 3-bedroom homes there. But then, okay, so let's move on. Air quality. Now, a little while ago, there was a big political battle on air quality on the A127. Yet here we're saying it's not a problem. So I guess that wasn't true. And in terms of that air quality, if we find out that we do have a problem, we can't do anything about it. There's no offer up here, and offers being up here made in the report that says we're checking on it. It says we're measuring it, but are there any results? Are there any indications? Do we have any direction on where that air quality is? Because once you've built these houses and people are in them, it becomes very difficult, other than electrification, to change the air quality. So do we have results? Do we have something that's telling us it's not a problem, or are we just travelling hopefully?
Charles can answer that question for you.
So, Councillor Turner, on paragraph 6.17.1 of the report, we advise that the Environmental Health Service have advised that the speed limit change on the A127, which became effective in January 2020, with the intention that the target annual average level of nitrogen dioxide along the paths either side of the A127 would be achieved. So due to the steep drop-off of nitrogen dioxide levels from the point of emissions, due to dilution and dispersion, emissions arising on the 127 are not relevant to any future exposure to nitrogen dioxide at the site of Gardens Lane South.
So have they been measured? Is somebody measuring them? Or is it, as I say, is it just travelling hopefully that, you know, if we reduce the speed, that will be the outcome?
No, it's ongoing measure. It's an ongoing management plan. Once
yeah, but have we seen measurements? Have we seen results?
Well, when were the last ones done?
Well, the air quality assessment submitted with the application would have had testing in it, yeah, which was reviewed by the council's environmental health team.
All I'm saying is, you know, we've got one chance to get this right. You can't put any mitigation in once it's built. Yet we're relying on anecdote, people travelling, as I say, hopefully, and there's going to be murder if we put those people in those houses and then suddenly find we have a problem.
Could we put?
I will leave.
Councillor Turner, could we? So hold on. Let's just hold this. Could we put a condition that requires for the additional phasing that we have to then run that additional air quality
testing?
So we could put additional condition, Councillor Turner, to deal with this point. You're quite right. This is a phased development, so each phase then would require us to then look at the air quality, and therefore, if the air quality needs any assessment to do with the development, i.e., changes to the development or alterations to how the development comes forward, we can look at it at that time. Would that meet your concerns?
I just think that
no. I mean, I've asked you a question because basically, you know, if you've got a point you've raised to us, I can answer that and offer a way of a mitigation. If that meets your concerns.
So yes, part of it. But what I would like us to do is to go and ask the Environment Agency: are there any issues now? Do they see? Are they measuring the air quality? Have they measured it?
I mean, the outcomes we've got is basically that from the discussions we've had with our environmental health team, and they're working on this whole programme, not just working on this application, there is nothing to withhold planning permission. So therefore, from our perspective, because we are not specialists in air quality, we take the advices of the environmental health team, who are the air quality specialists in the borough, and they've told us the scheme is safe to go ahead. From our perspective, and following your, I think, quite sensible suggestion, is that we need to put additional condition that would require, on a phased approach, that we readdress the air quality, and I think that's a very sensible position to take, Councillor Turner.
Okay, then let's do it.
Okay.
On the rugby club, great news for all the clubs, and good to hear what's going on there. But one thing that will be of a concern is the floodlight and the bleed that goes into the residential areas. Has that been looked at? Is there mitigation?
Yeah, there is mitigation on that. Actually, there is two. Well, the mitigation is twofold. Actually, not just about the residential dwellings, but also about the wildlife. So there is, I think, there's one at 43, and there's one later on in the 70s to do with there's one at 74 to deal with wildlife sensitivity lighting design. So actually, there are two conditions to deal with flood lighting and the sports provision.
Okay, thank you. Gardens. 10 metres adequate. I don't think that's our policy. I think our policy is 13 metres. Can somebody tell me if I'm wrong?
The design, our own design standards no longer exist, so we now rely on the outputs from the Essex Design Guide, and that is around actually looking at how the development best fits and how those gardens then work in that environment. And therefore, the gardens that we've got in this case have been through a review of how the development has come forward, and based on that, the garden size has been considered to be acceptable.
Okay, for what it's worth, I think they're unacceptable. I think 10 metres is a problem, but okay. On the schematic that you showed, it looked quite idyllic with roads that look like they're proper roads and pathways. But do we actually get that? Do we actually get two-way highways and paths by the side of the road?
Yep.
We do.
Through the site, there is actually quite a strong cycle walking route that actually is based on the fact that it is all about a thoroughfare through the site with the good wide cycling and walking. And you're quite right, an upgrade to all the major roads to ensure that we get proper roads entering and throughout the site to ensure good road traffic.
Okay, and last point on green spaces, again, not fully met. And you're going to tell me that we have to achieve a number of housing, but this was my point to start with.
Councillor Turner, the point on open space is the fact that the site delivers an awful lot of public and public-private space. So we deliver the open space in the middle, and also we deliver the all the other sporting sites. So there is actually an awful lot of open space on the site. The issue here relates to public open space, and we have created an environment where this site actually should utilise the actual strategic play spaces that we've got at Whitmore Way and the other one.
Holy Cross.
Holy Cross. So rather than creating on site and another play space, what we have sought working with our own teams, Grant Taylor in leisure, is to actually upgrade sustainable play space, which we consider a more viable way of delivering formal open space going forward, is the fact that rather than create lots of random little play areas, is we actually upgrade our really good high quality play spaces in the borough to make strategic play spaces out of them. And what that does, that will encourage the walking and cycling from this site under the underpass, because there is an underpass that goes under the road and onto those new upgraded play spaces. And that's what our attitude to open space is going to be going forward, is the fact that we have to now provide SUDS areas which take up an awful lot of space and create good open space and actually high levels of ecology. But actually that public formal open space, we're looking to create these high quality, sustainable sort of large play spaces that we can invest in as a council, but we invest in them in really strategic places, not just keep popping them up all over the place. That never works, and they look really bad really quickly, and our best bet is to upgrade our existing ones.
Okay, the underpass you're talking about is not friendly. Yeah,
that's why we're investing in that as well.
So it's not a friendly underpass. In fact, it's quite, well, scary. The hedgerows are overgrown. People don't like walking under it. I mean, that's my backyard when I was growing up, and even now, I'd be looking for an alternative route.
Well, that's part of Route 11 is actually seeks to improve that underpass. So that is part of that work we've got going at the moment in terms of that Route 11 sustainable transport upgrade.
Yeah, both Holy Cross and Whitmore Way, you could say, are on the doorstep, but I'd be amazed to see if people are going to use that on a regular basis. And again, the disappointment on this is we had an opportunity to put in some green spaces, and we haven't. We've put probably more housing than we should on this at the expense of green spaces, and I think that again detracts from all of the other good stuff that is going on with this development. What I would say, if I can, Chairman, I finish with my questions. I'm not going to be voting for this tonight. I think again we've missed an opportunity. The mix of housing, the density of the housing, yeah, we do need affordable housing, absolutely. And I've got nothing against market rent. I think it should be there. But the bit that we won't see, and that will be the social housing bit, I'll put money on it now that we won't get any council housing. I mean, let that be the challenge to the developer. But as we see those developments come through, I don't think a developer will want to take people off the council waiting list. Why not? That again is what we're here for. And the report provides nothing for social housing as a guarantee. It's all left to chance, basically. And I don't think as members we should be doing that. I think it should be written into the report. We should have got that agreed right at the beginning. We've got policies there. We've walked away from at least 3 of them. And I don't think that's acceptable. So I won't be voting for it, Chairman, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I just want to add one thing. Bill, we've got to need to remember, because of the other things we're dealing with our roads down the 127 and the pollution that we had there, and what DEFRA wanted to do in response to that, that we have to send regular reports to DEFRA on the air quality there, and that has been continued to be done throughout this period. So I just want to sort of stress that point, that the information that our environmental team is using is up to date because of the requirements that we have to provide that information to DEFRA. I next had Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, that was quite interesting in terms of what the public had to say, and the report from officers that we read from cover to cover, and the presentations that were actually given. I have some concerns, but I think there might be concerns that could be mitigated and possibly navigated. And it's really on this point that the residents were making that exist already in respect of the positioning of the apartment blocks to their existing premises. I'm wondering if there could be, from the developer, some movement on that actually maybe only houses would be actually opposite their property or something like that, and that the flats could be positioned elsewhere. I was wondering about the comments from the Culpeper Club in respect of their dance club, and whether there was some security that could be given to them about what would happen to them going forward. They didn't actually put any objections to the planning application itself. In fact, they welcomed it largely, but they obviously had concerns about their own future, which seemed reasonable. The badgers, I see in condition 73 that actually that the badger set closure should not take place in any circumstances, commence unless the local planning authority has been provided with either the license by Natural England as point A, or a statement in writing from the relevant licensing body in part B. And this is all, as it says, to conserve the protected species. But it doesn't seem to absolutely marry what we were getting in the report, because we were being told that there would be an artificial set created. And this is actually just talking about the closure. So I'd feel more secure if that could be married up more closely to the report, that particular condition. I'd also, because it's an outline, there's a hybrid planning application, and with the other parcels coming forward, it would actually be interesting to review the position of the badgers as well, because I do have concerns that these are quite territorial animals, and that we may actually be very much upsetting their natural rhythm. I mean, somebody mentioned foxes and deer, and foxes seem to be very adaptable to the urban environment. I don't see many badgers walking around Pitsea, and I do see a lot of foxes. So I just would like us to get this right, you know, for our fellow habitants on this planet. So if we could actually look at that, that would be good. I could see that, you know, there was some other, it was interesting that the sports clubs were generally in favour, and so that's quite good, and that was quite good in that respect. I share some concerns about the affordable housing, like my fellow councillor Turner as well. And partly is one question that doesn't seem to have been addressed so far, and that's to do with the staging of it, because it looks like with parcel 3 goes forward, there's absolutely no affordable housing, and that actually when we get to parcels 9 and 10, that's when 50% of the affordable housing is actually delivered, which is much further down the track. And I was wondering if there was any way to actually accelerate the stages to actually make sure that it's smoothed out more and is actually bringing on more affordable housing sooner, because obviously we have identified a need for affordable housing, and it is a shame if it's going to wait for later parcels that are going to all go through reserved matter planning applications further down the line, that this is actually going to be much later in the process. And so people are going to be waiting a lot longer for this affordable housing. Of course, we could also have the situation where we're passing parcel 3 and the hybrid application, but we may never get to parcel 4. So it's just thinking about that as well in the round, I would say, on this. Sorry, Christine, were you coming in?
No, I was just trying to get Charles' attention. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So yes, I mean, these are things I think could be mitigated. Education-wise, I get what you're saying. In terms of the forecasting, forecasting can be just finger in the air, and you don't know what is actually going to come forward in terms of realistically what the places are actually going to be, to a degree. Especially as you said, there was a different forecast made a couple of years before, which resulted in no extra places for Basildon. I saw the chair frown as I said forecasting. Maybe that's her economics background that gave me that look. But the point I was trying to make is obviously it is still speculative at this stage. I get that. But could we at least have an earlier review point than 2026? Could we at least have a review point of 2023? Because the officer was mentioning 2023 as the year when it was expected there would be some deficit for Basildon. I know there was the talk of it's significant, but as soon as we find at 2023 that there's some deficit, it then starts matching with that model, that forecast. And then we could actually extrapolate from there, could we, that the forecast is correct or not at that point, and the evidence is stronger at that point. And because this is a hybrid planning application, and that we're going to have to look at these reserved matters again, it may give us cause to actually revisit it in as well when we come to those reserved matters. It was just the point of sort of trying to find a third way to actually deal and alleviate the concerns of Councillor Turner and my concerns, really. We do hear from residents that they are actually thinking about sending their kids outside of the borough, or they are sending their kids outside of the borough to sit A-levels. So although we are saying, you know, on paper, it may be that there are places available, in reality, parents are sending their children outside of the borough. So where we have an opportunity to look at funding for a secondary school, I think we should look at it. And if we can look at it earlier, then I think we should. In some ways, it's a shame that the previous Vice Chair of Planning, Councillor Fellows, wasn't here, because I think this was a subject very close to his heart as well. So, yeah, I don't know if Christine could, or any of the other officers could actually address some of those issues.
So I can deal with the Copper Club straight away for you. Again, that is a matter which has been dealt with by the developer, and the security of tenure is a matter for the current landowner, which is obviously Homes England, and the applicant. So as far as Copper Club are aware, that would be for that private matter, a civil matter, nothing to do with the local planning authority. In terms of what happens next, that would be a matter for them to talk through. And I'm aware there are ongoing negotiations between the Copper Club and Inland Homes and Homes England, but obviously I'm not party to those discussions. We're not as a local planning authority, so that is our position with regard to that. In terms of the apartment block, that's the full application, so therefore that has been set. So that apartment block is an apartment block, and that's what we've looked at in terms of development and in terms of how properties being faced and windows, they reflect the fact that it sits near an existing dwelling on the site, maybe slightly further forwards, therefore the impact and overlooking is obviously therefore reduced. In terms of the badges, the condition that we've got in here is one that's been required by the relevant parties that look after badges, and that tends to be the standard condition for badger safety. I think that to move a set, you have to be able to provide an ongoing location for that set. So I think to comply with the requirements, you've got to say where the badges are going to go to. You just can't close the set. So I think it's the whole package. So I think the condition itself is worded like that to meet that requirements. But I mean, we can look at amending that condition to add in your requirements to look at the onward position with regard to that. Charles, can we look at just amending that condition to deal with we can look at that, and can we agree that condition with the chairman of planning on that, the final wording of that condition, like the wording will look on the air quality phasing condition. In terms of education, 2023, actually, if you look at the development itself, we're at early doors of the first phase 3 at the moment. So by the time we get to 2023, you'll only have the first part of the development completed. So you will have no indication. We'll probably be at the same position we're here at the moment. There's no indication of a deficit. We looked at the fact that this is deficit for the whole of Basildon itself, not the borough, but Basildon town itself, and we looked at that as being a looking at how the other sites are going to come forward in the local plan, as well as looking at delivering. There already is a surplus of secondary school places, and that is clear. So the 2026 position was taken as an agreed position with regard to when we'd start to see some deficit, but that wouldn't be sufficient to then fund the new secondary school. And what these funds that we're going to be accumulating from these developments is about funding the secondary school at 2031. It's not about delivering. So it's just basically creating a pot of money going forwards. So we'd be looking at, so by 2026, we probably won't have, we'll probably have less than 85% of the development under application. So we'd still have a large portion of ability to seek contributions from the developer in terms of those secondary school places going forward to hopefully deal with any forecast deficit we have by that point. Charles will deal with the affordable housing. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So just in terms of affordable housing, yeah. So there is none proposed on the first phase, phase 3, and it is sort of pushed slightly back. That's largely because there's some quite significant upfront costs associated with relocating the gun club, which I think is circa 4 million, and some other enabling development in terms of infrastructure and the widening of Gardeners Close. So that's the reason why there isn't any in the first phase. There is quite a lot in phase 10. Which you've noted, which phase 10 is an unusual parcel because it could potentially come forward quite early. So, if we've put in the report that the applicant's in initial discussions with SEMPRA on this phase. So, if an agreement could be reached, that site could come forward a lot earlier than the indicative 10 that's shown. So it's so that could potentially deliver early on affordable housing. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, you've got your hand raised. You've got a further question for our officers?
Yeah, I mean, like Councillor Turner, I wouldn't mind if when we're doing these sessions, you didn't mute and unmute like this, but there we go. In terms of the affordable housing, it was just, obviously, I just want to know what weight we're giving to this, because obviously it's a hybrid application. And these the figures we're talking about for those parcels are, they could be looked again at reserve matters, but we've got this parcel 3 that's going forward with 0 affordable housing. So I just want to understand the implications of what we're actually voting on today in terms of affordable housing, and the concrete nature of parcel 3 versus the other parcels as part of the outline.
So what we don't want to be doing, Councillor Rimmer, is actually unpicking. Oh, sorry, you want I think he wants to. I think Councillor Rimmer wants to be unmuted. What we don't want to do is to give any chance during the reserved matters to unpick the affordable housing position. So, sorry, Councillor Turner. Sorry, Councillor Rimmer. Sorry, Councillor Rimmer's got his hand up.
Yeah, please. I just, so I can have a normal conversation. I just want. I didn't want to interrupt. It's so I can have a normal conversation, Chair, please.
But Councillor
Like
Rimmer,
you afforded other councillors.
Councillor Rimmer, can we just please allow our officer to answer a question at a time, please? Thank you.
Very, very careful, Councillor. We don't affect the affordable housing contributions on future phases. So therefore, the affordable housing levels are set at 31% for those phases where delivery will be delivered across the whole scheme.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, this is the difficulty with all this muting and unmuting that goes on. I don't know, members of the public realise the level the chair wishes to actually stop debate. But in terms
I am
of
not
this,
stopping debate. I am allowing our officers to answer your questions. Do you have another question for our officers?
I'm trying to actually have, so please just stop muting, please.
No, Councillor Rimmer, I want our officers to be able to answer you uninterrupted.
Which was happening.
Do you have another question for our officers?
I do, because you kept, I do.
Okay, you may ask the question. Thank you.
Then don't mute me, please. Thank you.
So the whole scheme is delivering 31% affordable housing, Councillor Rimmer. What we don't want is the capacity for the developer at either phases of the outline of those reserve matters to come back and challenge us on viability in terms of the issues of that site in terms of affordable housing. Therefore, we've kept it really tight across the scheme. So the scheme as a whole will deliver 31% affordable housing, and that's where that is where the scheme is quite tight on that position, and that's why it's delivered in that in a phased approach across the phases as they come forward. So we don't want to give anyone any chance of coming forward with any challenges in terms of the viability, because we don't want to start unpicking that, because it hasn't been unpicked as part of this application, and we don't want it unpicked later on in any further phases.
So with this, if we have a situation whereby it doesn't go forward after phase 3, what can we do about that?
Well, I mean, the issue is the fact that if the development doesn't come forward after phase 3, we'll have an extant planning permission. Now, the council could at that point decide that, along with Homes England, that the site could be then purchased through that route and then built out through a different offer. The fact that the planning permission will be there, so if Enland Homes decide to build out the first phase and then walk away, the planning permission will be still there for future, and obviously the obligations attached to parcel 3 would have to be undertaken. So that is the initial works that are required as part of parcel 3 are set out already in the and that relates to the roadway, that relates to the SUDs in connection with phase 3. So that part of the scheme will be delivered alongside whatever development agreement the developer's got with Homes England in terms of delivering the rifle club.
So in effect, it's reasonable to say that because they're putting that level of upfront investment into the other elements, they would probably be very much wedded to actually going forward with the other phases, because it wouldn't make sense to do that investment otherwise.
I would say it's possibly the correct position to take, Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you. And is I mean, you said about, there was something you said in respect to the block of apartments, which I wanted to come back to, which was actually that was pretty much set. It is. I didn't quite understand why that was the case.
Well, it's a full up. That is, so it's a hybrid application, but phase 3 has come in as a full. So phase 3 is actually what's going to be built. So that's the full element, rather than the rest of it. You're looking at is a perceived sort of plan of what it probably would look like. I think the master plan is pretty well fixed, but like phase 9 will be more challengeable, because we need to look at how the school fits into phase 9. So phase 9 might change. So there are phases in the reserve matters application that might be tweaked slightly, but we know that phase 3 is phase 3, and phase 3 is a full application.
At this stage, we have no influence on whether it's housing or flats that would actually go opposite the existing residence dwellings.
On the, as you look at the plan on the west side, that is what's set as the full application. On the east side, that hasn't come forward as a plan application yet.
Okay, and I've been reminded by Councillor Hillier previously of this meeting that it's important with blocks of flats to make sure there's letterboxes on the outside. Is that something that's being considered?
We can put a informative, I don't think we can do it as a condition, we can put an informative that requires that to happen. Can make a note of that, Charles? We put an informative.
Yeah, we can check the detailed design.
Yeah, we can put an informative on that for you, Councillor. There's no problem with that at all. So
thank you very
from discussions with you, Councillor, we're going to put in, we're going to enlarge the condition regarding badges, and we're going to put an informative requiring the use of external letterboxes for residents in the flats.
Thank you very much.
On the full and the outline reserve matters applications.
With all of those matters, I'll be voting for the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rimmer.
I've now got Councillor Dare indicating.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be brief and I won't waste anyone's time or the officer's time tonight. But having previously played football myself at these facilities, I totally understand the representations of the sports clubs this evening, where they have spoken about how the facilities are tired, expensive to run, and are not fit for purpose. And it is so exciting that with the backing of Sport England, the site will have significant private investment to ensure fantastic facilities, which will contribute to the physical well-being of our borough, and allowing young people to engage in sport at affordable prices. Apart from sport, I'm also encouraged to hear about the benefits which will occur as a result of the development, such as the infrastructure improvements, which will happen first before any significant development takes place, the sustainable transport links and pedestrian links, as well as creating floor space for businesses, which we hope will create jobs and help our young people with apprenticeships. I'm also pleased to see that the majority of the public representations we had this evening were in favour of the application, and rightly so. I will therefore be supporting this application, and I hope other members will do so as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dare. And it's quite sad to say that probably about 10 years ago, I actually remember you played with the Sams, Dempsey and Dudley there, and myself and Lauren watching you. How embarrassing is that? 10 years ago, very quickly. Councillors, do I have any other councillor indicating? Councillor McGeorge?
Yep, all good. Thank you very much. I will keep this quite brief. This scheme delivers the 31% affordable housing that we are craving for on these developments. We cannot let this go. We're getting land for a new primary school with new early years provision. This is something that we need. We're getting new sports facilities for our residents. The planning still allows a green space. There is still woodland there for children to play in. There are local parks. I genuinely think we'd be mad to pass this up. I'll be in favour of this application.
Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. I'd just like to say a couple of things briefly. First of all, when we're talking about the actual provision of 1 and 2 beds housing, the mix of tenure that we're looking at, what we need to be aware of is what our residents are saying they need now and what we expect them to need within the first few phases of this development. And it is clear that 1 and 2 bedroom properties is what we are craving for across this borough. That is what our housing need is showing with the work that our officers have previously done when looking and preparing our local plan and the way in which that move forward. We've got to look at in terms of every planning application in terms of whether or not it is sustainable, whether or not we receive funding across the board for various types of infrastructure. And as Councillor Morris pointed out, that this is a sustainable development with excellent infrastructure. I think the provision when we're looking forward for walking, for cycling, and therefore leading people across into our green spaces, particularly with the upgrades that we're having. I mean, Councillor Turner quite rightly points out that underpass at the moment is not completely fit for purpose. And therefore, by ensuring that we have infrastructure monies to upgrade that, it definitely alleviates that issue. and I have no issue whatsoever in supporting this application. With that, guys, I'd like to take this to the vote. So if councillors could please be unmuted so they may take the vote. Thank you.
Paula, can you remind Councillor Paula?
So,
can you remind Councillor Brown of the additional conditions? And
She said,
So,
remind you of the conditions.
yes, I'm just saying that I want to make sure that she has them there ready for you, because we've got quite a list now. So I'm going to ask the officer just to run through the additional recommendations for approval as outlined on page 49 with the previous conditions that are there, with the already outlined within the report. I'm just going to have the officers remind you of what the additional requirements are. The addition. Can you unmute, Christine? Thank you.
The additional conditions are I think the correct one that Councillor Turner asked for was that for the air quality monitoring phasing coming forward on each phase of development. I think that's really important. Councillor Rimmer requested the amendment to the Badger condition to require some additional work on looking at not only the closure of the sets but the provision of new sets. And also Councillor Rimmer requested and I think quite accepted and informative relating to ensuring that all flats on all phases have external letterboxes. I think that was them all. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you. Okay, I will now take that to the vote. I will come initially to Councillor McGeorge.
In favour.
I will now come to Councillor Morris.
In favour.
Come to Councillor Turner.
Without anything on the waiting list, Chairman, regrettably, I'm going to go against the application.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer.
For.
Councillor Darren.
In favour.
And I will also vote in favour. Thank you. So plan application recommendation has been passed. Thank you. We'll now move on to item agenda 4.
Chairman, may we have a break first?
We may, Carol. Would 10 minutes be okay? Okay, guys. So it's now 1:45. We'll get back here about 5 to. Thank you. If you'd like to turn your cameras off whilst we're taking the break, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello, councillors. Are you ready to switch your cameras back on again, and then I can restart the recording?
Thank you. We'll now resume our meeting. We're moving on to item agenda 4, and we're coming to Tomasz first, I believe.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Again, just as an introduction, Chair, and for members regarding item number 4 relating to land at Market Square, Basildon, I'd just like to give an introduction prior to presenting, passing over to the presenting officers of Adele Lawrence and Gordon Humphreys. Members will remember that they considered this application in February. This application has been brought back to members as Essex County Council felt that their position was not fully articulated to members in terms of the overall scheme, viability, and education contributions. And following the resolution of the February meeting, they raised the issue of highway modelling. Essex County Council has confirmed that the report before you today fully sets out Essex County Council's position. And although Essex County Council does still have concerns about the development, particularly regarding potential long-term infrastructure under delivery, however, following helpful discussions with our officers and the mitigations set out in the report, their position is that they do not formally object to the application, and it also reflects the good working relationships between both council officers. Essex County Council's representations must be accorded the correct weight and considered conscientiously. However, these do not preclude Basildon Council from determining the application this evening, provided that we act on evidence and give clear reasons for our decision. Essex County Council's concerns are set out in the report, and their latest correspondence on the matter has been circulated to members with the update sheet. Based on the evidence available to us, we consider that there is no proper basis for refusing to grant planning permission in this instance, nor is there any proper basis for deferring the application. The reasons for this are detailed within the report dated 29th of April. Therefore, as set out at paragraphs 1.6 of the 29th April report, members are required to consider the whole application in light of the information within the officers' reports of the 24th of February and 29th of April, both of which are within the agenda. Once again, in relation to the section 106, which would accompany any grant of planning permission, Essex County Council and Basildon Council are committed to working jointly to ensure the collection of contributions and delivery of infrastructure in Basildon to meet the needs of our communities. Therefore, in relation to this application, Basildon Council have agreed to work closely with Essex County Council, sharing draft wording of the Section 106 agreement and enabling Essex County Council to agree the final wording for inclusion in the Section 106 in relation to infrastructure to be delivered by the County Council. All of this information is included in the update sheet issued to members, Chair. And that's the end of my introduction, and I'd like to pass over to the presenting officers, Adele Lawrence and Gordon Humphreys, Chair.
Thank you. First.
Hello, yes, Gordon Humphreys. I shall be presenting tonight. Apologies, I don't think my webcam is working this evening, but I shall be narrating the slides. The application relates to land at Market Square, Basildon. The application has previously been considered by members at the Planning Committee held the 24th of February 2021, where members resolved to grant planning permission for the development subject to Section 106 obligations and conditions as set out at the end of the original committee report attached at enclosure 2. The application is for the demolition and redevelopment of the existing building and erection of a mixed-use scheme comprising of flexible commercial floor space, use classes A1 to A5, B1, D1, D2 on the ground to first floors, and 492 1- and 2-bedroom residential apartments, use class C3, in 3 blocks of up to 17 stories with associated parking, servicing and community areas. Next slide, please. Now I will introduce the application and my colleague Mrs Lawrence will run through the changes since members previously considered the application. Members should be aware there is an update sheet for the application. This identifies that since the resolution to grant planning permission for application 20009554 at the Planning Committee on the 24th of February 2021, a further 3 representations of objection have been received from local residents, and these largely reflect those comments previously identified in the initial report. These raise concerns that high rises will dominate the skyline of Basildon and be an eyesore, that development will not help those on the Basildon housing list or keep workers if they aren't affordable, that there will be adverse impacts on surrounding roads and increased pressures on schools, hospitals, doctors' surgeries due to insufficient infrastructure, that there will be an increase in pollution and crime, loss of shops, and be of no benefit to the town. I should also advise that since the application was considered at the February Planning Committee, Historic England have notified the Council that the Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport has decided not to add the building or attach Geoffrey Clark Mosaic to the list of buildings of architectural or historic interest. The site is located on the north side of Market Square, south side of Town Square, east of Fodderwick, west of Market Pavement. The large rectangular shaped site extends to just under 3/4 of a hectare and currently comprises a Part 3, Part 4 storey building constructed around 1958. The building has been under use for some time, and despite recent repairs, the facades are of poor quality and much of the ground floor is inactive with high levels of vacancy. Prominent retailers within the block include Lloyd's Bank, Mill Square Public House and Greg's the Bakers. Basildon Railway Station is some 130 metres to the south, beyond the recently constructed South Essex College. Westgate Park Shopping Centre is to the west, the former M&S building is to the north, Brick House further to the east at the end of Town Square. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, the application is for 492 1- and 2-bedroom build-to-rent units. These will be in 3 blocks of 9 to 17 stories in height. There will be 2,879 square metres of flexible retail commercial space. Use classes A1 to A5, B1, D1 and D2. These will largely be considered E-class flexible use nowadays. This will also include 212 square metres of healthcare stroke community use, 285 square metres of small, medium-sized enterprise business incubator space, 2,655 square metres of external community amenity space. 119 units, that's 24%, would comprise 5 square metre exterior balconies, with the remaining units having Juliet balconies. 615 square metres of internal community amenity space would be provided. There would be 69 car parking spaces, including 8 blue badge and 2 car club spaces. Of the 69 spaces, 20 would comprise active and 49 passive electric vehicle charging points. There would also be 5 motorcycle spaces, and there would be 530 cycle parking spaces. The next slide, please. This just shows a couple of computer-generated images of the development, just to refresh your memory of what was proposed. As Thomas has mentioned, following the Planning Committee on the 24th of February 2021, Essex County Council subsequently wrote to the Council to express concerns about how their representation had been detailed in the committee report and the level of contributions sought specifically in respect of education provision and highways impacts in advance of modelling. As previously discussed in the committee of the 24th of February 2021, the scheme has marginal viability. This has been confirmed by independently appointed consultants. It is therefore not possible for the scheme to finance all the requested financial contributions. To address this, the Council has opted for a blended approach to ensure contributions are spread evenly across all infrastructure requests. An overall package of financial contributions for future infrastructure for the town centre, totalling just over £2.4 million, has been negotiated with the applicant. The scheme is a regeneration project with a need to deliver on a number of priorities. The Council has therefore had regard to the consultation responses that have generated requests for financial contributions in respect of affordable housing, education, open space, sports facilities of public realm, highways, sustainable transport, healthcare, employment and skills, together with the need for compliance with the Essex Coastal RAMS work and Section 106 monitoring. Next slide, please. This slide just shows the contributions that have been secured, excluding education, which my colleague will come on to in a moment. And these are largely as previously highlighted in the report on the 24th of February. In respect of sustainable transport, the contribution would comprise approximately £492,000. In respect of highways improvements and pedestrian access, a contribution of £676,000 would be provided. In terms of healthcare, £103,000 has been agreed if a healthcare facility is not provided on site. In terms of open space, culture, play and sports, £571,000 approximately has been agreed, and employment and skills, £150,000. In respect of the Essex Coast Recreation Avoidance Mitigation, that raised slightly since April 1st when the figure was increased. Previously it was £61,785. That's increased by around £800 to £62,631.60 as identified on the slide. In relation to contributions sought by Essex County Council, in line with the Essex Developers Guide to Infrastructure Contributions, it's for this council to decide whether or not the level of contribution requested is appropriate, and only the local planning authority can look at the cumulative costs of the developer contributions requested and thereby assess how the viability of the development should be balanced against the need to fund infrastructure. I shall now pass you over to my colleague, Mrs. Lawrence, who will talk about the education side of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Can I have the next slide, please? With respect to education, the Essex County Council Developers Guide to Infrastructure Contributions generated a request for just over 1.7 million in education contributions for early years, primary and secondary places. In arriving at that figure, the early years places were charged around £10,000 more per place than the primary places, as set out in the Developers Guide. It is clear from the government's education policies that early years places should not be charged at a higher rate than primary places, and therefore we have applied a flat rate of £20,508 per place based on the cost of a primary place to arrive at an overall revised County Council education request of £1,597,021.56. As my colleague advised on tonight's previous committee item, Essex County Council has confirmed today that our position in respect of the lower charge for early years places is correct. Land for a new 30-place early years facility was also requested. Officers consider that there would be scope to accommodate an early years facility in the ground floor flexible commercial use space within the site if required by the market. Having regard to the marginal viability of the scheme and the competing obligations, the level of education contribution negotiated with the applicant equates to £369,144 to cover 9 early years and 9 primary school places. However, in light of Essex County Council's recent representation with concerns regarding the level of education contributions being offered, and following discussions with the applicant, it is proposed to secure additionally the following obligations as set out on the screen. in regards to an early stage review, if within 2 years of planning permission being granted, the construction of the development has not progressed beyond the completion of all ground preparation and enabling works and completion of the building to first floor slab level, and to secure a late stage viability review to take place 12 months post completion of the whole development. In respect of any relevant surplus in the council's favour arising from the early and late stage reviews, this is to be used in the first instance to deliver up to the full Essex County Council requested education contributions for the development of 1.597 million. And any further surplus beyond this is to be used to deliver affordable housing through a commuted sum contribution. Have the next slide, please. So this just is a summary of the education contributions. The 333,506 requested by Essex County Council for early years, 756,745 requested in respect of primary places, 613,253 for secondary places. It came to the 1.7 million figure that I mentioned earlier, which we have advised should be revised down to 1.597 million based on the early years being charged at the same cost as the primary places. So the offer is £369,144 and the early and late stage review mechanisms to deliver up to the full Essex County Council education contributions for the development of 1.597 million. Next slide, please. So Essex County Council's recent representation also set out that as Highway Authority, they consider that no decision should be made until the additional town centre highway modelling work is complete, which includes the impact of the Basildon town centre growth. No evidence has been provided or referred to any current evidence to substantiate a defendable reason for refusal with regard to matters of highway safety, highway capacity, the free flow of traffic and parking provision. There is considered to be no merit in deferring a decision on the planning application until such time as the town centre transport modelling work has been completed. The application is acceptable as it currently stands and as demonstrated in the applicant's transport statement, along with the appropriate mitigation and enhancement measures to be secured by Section 106 agreement and conditions. Just to remind you, this includes $676,000 to deliver high quality highway improvements and pedestrian access in the town centre, and $492,000 towards sustainable transport. So to conclude, the development is considered to strike an appropriate and proportionate balance between the competing obligation requests in order to secure the necessary infrastructure given the viability constraints of the scheme. The application represents sustainable development in accordance with the adopted and emerging local plan, the MPPF, and the aspirations of the Basildon Town Centre regeneration strategy. It is recommended that the committee resolves that planning application 20-00955 full be granted planning permission subject to the conditions set out at the end of the committee report, with any amendments that might be necessary up to the issue of the decision notice, and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the planning obligations set out at Section 8.2 of the committee report. Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you. We do not have any members of the public wishing to speak on this or any of the councillors, therefore I'll come to our committee. The first councillor I've got indicating is Councillor Rimmer. Thank you, Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we've discussed this application before. We've been given new evidence here today of the county's position. Sorry, it was given before today for members of the public. I am still of the position, as I was before, that the education funding doesn't meet the needs. I appreciate what the officer said in terms of the mechanism that would actually seek to mitigate that if there was surplus. But for me, looking at this application, the tallest tower is still too tall. It's still taller than Brook House by far, and the national space standards are still not being met. And obviously we've looked at the government policy when it comes to the funding of early years places and that formula and primary school places, and we've decided to accept that policy, but we're not accepting the national space standards for this particular development. I still have concerns about the lack of parking that goes with this particular development. I just think that we are missing a huge opportunity at actually attracting people and sorting out our parking issues. We should be providing adequate parking. The car will actually be electrified. Our electricity network will be carbon neutral. So we should not have any issues in terms of air quality and what we're doing in terms of impact on the environment by actually providing parking and facilities for electric vehicles. So I still have issues with how it would affect Brook House. There were obviously the mosaic. Thank you for the update. Obviously, the Secretary of State hasn't given it the status that was expected, but I think there was a mitigation anyway for moving the mosaic. So I don't think, for me, that would have been an issue anyway. But there's elements in terms of the height of the building, so that mass, that density, the national space standards not being met, the issues around affordable housing. I just wonder actually, and the issues in terms of education funding, they all concern me. We had been told that actually if we didn't take control of this process as a council, that these tower blocks would come anyway. I see no evidence of this when I'm being presented with viability studies to actually say that they can't build it unless they don't provide this education level, don't provide the affordability level, don't cut the flat sizes to less than the national space standard, and have to build tower blocks, one of them in this case, which is taller than Brook House. So for me, I still say we should reject this planning application, perfectly sound planning reasons, and the car parks as well, and be done with it, and see if we can actually, the developer will come back with a proposal that's actually more sympathetic to our town centre in terms of our heritage, in terms of the type of flats and apartments our people want to live in, and actually come back with a proposition that deals with giving us affordable housing in our town centre. Thank you. I'll be voting. I said thank you. I'll be voting against.
I next had Councillor Turner, and then I've got Councillor Morris.
Here we go.
You don't want me to speak, do you? It's disappointing. We're planning all this again. At the last meeting in February, I asked specifically, have we been discussing with our colleagues at Essex Council? And in not too many words, I think the answer was yes. Well, clearly we haven't. You know, and 2 months later, guess what? We're back with this charade. It's disappointing that Councillor Callaghan's not here to speak to it. I guess he's off planning the next atrocity for Basildon Town Centre. And, you know, let's be honest. There's only one person behind this, and that is him. Nobody else understands this strategy. And the point is, when you listen to the evidence, the reports that come out, about what this is and what it isn't. There isn't a single affordable housing going to Basildon's waiting list, and we're here talking about the resident. Okay, as I said before, it's important that residents that aren't eligible for council housing have access to market rents. But we haven't got one, we haven't yet, not with this application, not with last week's application for 8,000 homes, and not the application we had tonight, have we taken one person off of the council list. Not one. Now, I'm not proud of that, and you shouldn't be either. And you Labour lot, it's a disgrace, because this is who you stand up and talk for. I haven't heard anything tonight that, like Councillor Rimmer says, gives me a feeling that I want to vote for this. All the same issues are there. You know, we compromised on the size of and the quality of the internal design by convincing ourselves that it was all right if you didn't have a hall, you didn't need to meet the standard. Well, that's clearly wrong. The height, the impact to the town centre, the impact on Brook House, this strategy is just not working, and it won't work. And it won't be long before we get into the same issues that Croydon are having, all sorts of problems. Now, I've got nothing to convince me to vote for this again. And the fact that we're having to do this because Essex County Council have asked us to put their position just says to me we didn't do the job right in the first place. Chairman, I won't be voting for it, and I can't imagine there's any shape or form that you can bring this back that will convince me to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I've next got Councillor.
Since I've been unmuted, I presume you said me. I didn't hear.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions really to start with. When this was introduced to us, we were told that Essex County Council were no longer opposed to it after they'd written and said that they said they were no longer opposed to it, and yet at 1.2 on page 85 it clearly has been written, though Essex County Council remains supported for the development. So I'd like to know exactly which of those two it is, whether they are supporting it or whether they're just not opposed to it anymore. And also, we've been told that this has been brought back because Essex County Council felt that their views weren't represented. So why is it that we have therefore brought it back? We presumably must have agreed that with them that we misrepresented their views, or we didn't represent their views, or something of that sort. And I'd be interested to have seen the letter that they wrote. We had during the last item, Essex letter was published in the agenda, but the one for this item hasn't been published. So perhaps if I could ask for some feedback from those 3 points, please.
Councillor Morris, I can deal with the first question. The final response from Essex County Council is set out on the update sheet, and that reads: the following previous correspondence between Essex and Basildon Borough Council, we welcome this application being brought back before committee with ECC's position being clearly set out. Set out clearly, sorry. This has been our key concern in this and other applications, that full information is set out for the committee so able to reach an informed and balanced determination. On this basis, ECC is not objecting to this application. The matters that they were concerned about related to education and how we'd actually come up with the figure of 300,000, whatever it was, in terms of the education contribution, and also the overall viability of the scheme. And they wanted that made very clear to members how we'd address the viability and how we'd then address the contributions that were going to be sought in terms of the the very marginal viability of the scheme. And we then set that out properly in the report. We go over the viability. We then go over the obligations that have been sought, and then we went over specifically the education matter, which the Education Authority had raised. They had raised the concerns, the fact that we should be seeking further education contributions, but that there was no extra additional money in the scheme. So that's where we've had negotiations with the County Council with regards to the early and late stage review that has set up the capacity then to seek further funds if any further money comes from the scheme due to those viability assessments. In relation to the correspondence, can I turn to Paula on that point? Paula? Is Paula? No, we haven't. No.
Yes, if I could just clarify to members, the correspondence was a prejudice between the authorities.
Sorry, what does that mean?
The correspondence between the parties was subject to a legal privilege.
So it was to do with legal issues, was it?
It was, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that anyway. Perhaps, Chairman, if I can carry on. Yeah. Now we keep on hearing about the Basildon Town Centre regeneration strategy and etc. But we've also been told it's got no nil weight for planning at the moment. So I'm not quite sure why that keeps coming up in the agenda briefings. Yeah, the 2.2 million is very low for a development of nearly 500 apartments. So I'm not surprised that the town centre, that the council was asking for more. I do feel that the queries about the developer's guide for infrastructure contributions, of which Basildon is a signatory, why those queries couldn't have been addressed previously rather than in this particular meeting and agenda. It's a little unseemly that there's a sort of a row going on in this planning application.
Councillor Morris, on that point, we have raised that with county previously, so it's not just come out from this application. So that's not a point that's just come from this one application. So we had to make you aware of it because obviously it does unbalance and it makes it corrects the sums that we should be seeking in terms of the obligation. So I think it would have been wrong of us not to bring that to your attention. That had been formally agreed by the county that there was an error in that position. So we haven't, we're just reporting to your position. So basically clarifying our position in the report for you and on a formal basis.
Right. And also, I mean, the employment, careers and apprenticeships are areas that Essex County Council has experience in, and yet they're to be addressed by Basildon Economic Development Team, which again, doesn't seem to be the right forum for it.
Yes, it does, Councillor Morris. In our response that was undertaken by the council's response to the developer guide, contribution guide, it was made very clear and agreed by all parties that in terms of the obligations being sought for economic development, as we have a well-established economic development team in the borough council, we would use any contributions to work locally and use our own economic development team to deliver that, rather than give it to county for county to deliver those schemes for us. So it's kept locally, and that was made very clear in our response to the Essex Developer Guide back in 2019 and then in 2020, and that went to the Development Committee, and it was agreed at the Development Committee that would be the process for that. And and the guide actually does say now that certain authorities will be retaining their own contributions for their own purposes. So we did deal with that at that point.
Okay, it sounds like there are some issues with the way it's written that need to be rewritten. That there's obviously some errors in it that need to be ironed out. Okay, well, I think it would also be useful if, as members of the planning committee, we'd been allowed to see those and hear about the errors before, rather than that in the middle of a committee meeting, quite frankly. Now, 3.14, the developer is talking about, instead of providing money for libraries, it's going to provide reading areas. Are they also going to provide books in those areas?
The developers are required to provide superfast broadband across the whole of the development, and that's the commercial communal areas, and which there are some sort of open space work areas. So in those terms, that's how that matter's been dealt with. And again, in our response to the Essex developer guide, we made it very clear that library contributions would not be sought by this council.
And then we've got the issue of waste. Now, apparently this is not considered to be the sort of site that's covered by the waste plan, because it's not a garden suburb, but they are new properties and they are going to still be producing waste. So what's going to happen to all that waste?
The waste strategy for the town centre and the wider environs is a corporate position that we're putting together at the moment. So that's been dealt with over a corporate process, and this was relayed last week in terms of looking at the waste management strategy for the town centre as a whole. So therefore it will be picked up through that strategy. And the discussion we had, again, I know we shouldn't talk about other applications, but relating to the fact that these developments are going to be future-proof to ensure they can connect to a future wider system for waste collection, which we hope will be a far more practical way of delivering waste management, and it will be piped to a main collection point, and then you'll have vehicles collecting it from those places, therefore reducing the amount of vehicle movements in the locality of the town centre, and it will be picked up from they're normally from a base on the edge of the development, so you'll have a pickup point somewhere within the town centre for all the waste to be picked up from, and that is both domestic and commercial waste.
Yeah, I mean, the strategy sounds great, but it hasn't been developed. It's not operational, and yet we're forsaking an existing system in order to put people into a strategy that doesn't actually exist yet.
But they would have to undertake the normal waste requirements for commercial premises anyway. So that commercial collection for flats would come under that process. So we'd have to pay for waste collection through our normal requirements for commercial waste. So it would be picked up through that process. So it's not like it's not like a dwelling house, and they all do pay council tax as well. So they'll be paying council tax to both the borough and also the county for those services.
And paying it to the developer as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
I hope people wanting to live in these flats are listening to all these things that they're going to have to pay for, and lack of space, etc. Right. Okay. Well, look. In conclusion to all this application has got little to recommend it. Its viability issues means that very few of the mitigations that we would normally be asking for are actually being paid. And therefore they're going to be a heavier burden for the taxpayer, paying for all the education, highways, etc., that isn't coming via their payments. And the failure of the previous report and the misleading answers to questions at the previous planning meeting all give the impression of lack of transparency at the very least. So I don't really see how we can.
Sorry.
I don't see how I can get an improvement on this on tonight's meeting. Therefore, I will not be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. At this time, I've got Director of Growth wanting to come back in. Councillor, I can see your hand is up, but I've got other councillors who have not spoken yet that are waiting to come in. So if you could be patient, that would be great. But I've got the Director of Growth coming in next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to help provide a little bit of information for Councillor Morris and other members, just on the ED point that has been raised. Just to sort of advise that we have been in liaison with the county, as we do regularly, and have done work jointly on a number of schemes. But just on that particular point that was raised, the contribution that we've been seeking to achieve here is to help the delivery of our economic strategy, which has been recently reported to the Economic Development Committee. And those points have just been reflected in this report as well. But I just wanted to try and sort of add a little bit of clarity there and just to help Councillor Morris. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to do that for now? Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, I'm now going to come to Councillor McGeorge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I voted for on this proposal last time it came to the committee in February. And from what I have seen in the reports that we've had, there's no information in there that would make me change my mind on that. There's nothing come to light that's making me scream there's planning issues here that would make me vote against. So I will be voting in favour of this proposal again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. I'm now coming to Councillor Adieran. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Similar to Councillor McGeorge, I think in the interim, obviously, there's been discussion over the education contributions, but I think the position we've reached is the best that we can probably get at this point, and I'm actually satisfied with the conclusion we've reached, where obviously there'll be a surplus funds arrangement, and I think the regeneration plans and the plans for Basildon in particular, in terms of the town centre, are much needed, and I think these properties will bring a new lease of life to the local area. So my position hasn't changed either, so I'll be voting in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer, I believe you want to come back again. Do you have some additional new points? Thank you.
Firstly, I think Councillor Adieran's being a little disingenuous because he was satisfied without
Can we not be
surplus,
talking about other councillors, please, Councillor Rimmer? Councillor Rimmer, can we not be talking about other councillors, please? Can you please just state your questions and your points? Thank you.
It was a point of discussion, but I was just saying his point was disingenuous. Because there was no surplus last time when he voted in favour. So looking at these buildings, I wanted to ask the officers about about aviation, civil aviation, and the lights, and what the arrangements would be for lights on the buildings.
Sorry, bear with me. Councillor, I'm just looking to see if we consulted the Civil Aviation Authority. I think we did consult the Airports Authority at the time. Bear with me.
I can answer this if you'd like, Gordon. In respect of the original committee report, page 51, item 3.29, the Aerodrome Safeguarding Authority, they advised that there was no objection. So they had no objection to the height of the buildings, and they didn't propose any conditions or anything to secure in respect of lighting of the building or anything like that.
Thank you, Dale. Councillor Rimmer?
Yeah, it's just my understanding was that if the building was 45 metres or taller, but the best practice or good practice now was to have some sort of warning lights. And actually, if it's like 45 meters, you probably should have it like warning lights on the top of the building. It was like 45, over 45 to like under 105, you should have at that 45-meter level, and then again at the top of the building. Is that not something that we've examined? Is that not something we should be having conditions on
that.
in terms of good practice, in terms of safety?
Councillor Rimmer, we consulted on it and we got no comment and no objections back from the relevant body. I mean, I've worked in both Newham, where we've been right next door to the London City Airport, so I understand the requirements to comply with the aviation requirements. And also when I was at Hartsmere, we had a local airport near there, and generally we got very few requests for any dealings with those. What we can put on is that I can put an informative to meet your requirements, that basically we just the developer has direct contact with the Aerodrome Safety Authority, and should any requirements be put on that they are required anyway, so they have that discussion. We can add that as an informative, though I couldn't add it as a condition. Is that right?
Okay, thank you. Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Can you make a note of that so before I forget?
Do you have any further questions, Councillor Rimmer?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I mean, as before, my position is such that we are looking at tonight an application once again that is going to give more homes for our residents, more employment opportunities across the borough. It's going to enable us to regenerate a town centre, which we all agree is much needed, giving a better retail offer for our residents, giving more and higher quality amenity space. I do not understand what the issue is here. We've looked at this application previously, and it's clear that it is sustainable. We've got issues around car parking. The NPPF is aiming at reducing car usage in our urban spaces and in our town centres. And therefore, this follows through on those government policies that we have before us in order to do that. It provides a car share scheme, something that, as a mother of children, in the age group that will be looking to buy these types of properties, very few of them own and use cars. Many of them utilise this type of scheme. We think about the infrastructure around that town centre, and we think about the highways and the ways in which we previously looked in detail when we were planning the strategy for the town centre back in 2012, but also when we're looking at our local plan. That work has been done. I really do not have any issues whatsoever bringing forward this plan. I feel completely that the requirements that we have at the present across our borough for homes, for jobs, for better retail, more amenity space, this fulfills all of those criteria. And I feel therefore that we need to be in supportive of this, unapologetic for the ambitions that we have for Basildon's town centre and that regeneration programme. And so I have no problem whatsoever in supporting this application. With that, I'd like to take it to the vote, please. So if we could unmute all councillors, so we can vote on this item. Thank you. So the recommendation, let's find which page we're on. The recommendation can be found on page 200. And I'll get,
I think it's page 99.
Yeah, and Paul is just going to give us the additional part that's, oh sorry, or Christine is then. Sorry, I thought it was Paula. You unmute Christine, sorry.
And also an additional informative required by Councillor Rimmer in connection with a asking for some the developer speaks direct to the Aerodrome Safeguarding Authority in terms of just making sure the building complies with their requirements in terms of lighting and safety.
So with that, I will take it to the vote. I will come to Councillor McGeorge first of all.
In favour.
I will now come to Councillor Morris.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
You almost persuaded me, Chair, but I'm going to stick with voting against.
Councillor Rimmer.
Against.
Councillor Dearen.
In favour.
I also vote in favour, and with the chair's casting vote, it is passed in favour of the recommendation. Thank you for your attendance tonight, and I'll see some of you back after the election. Thank you.